I love how excited you are, Onye.
Is this from Adobe?
Great. You already said a brand we have to edit out.
It's like, is this from...
It does feel like we're in Miami every time.
And that's what we aspire to.
Great. Maddie, settle down. Hi. Welcome to the Mico podcast. I'm Mallory, the teacher.
I'm Rachel, the beginner.
And today our guest is...
Onye, Eme-Akwari.
I didn't really give you instructions.
But look at him, yes and.
Yes, look at him, yes anding. You did look panicked for a second, but
I'm still panicked.
full disclosure, we sat down, put our headphones on and like got in front of our mics, and I was like, let's just like make sure everything's working. And then I was like, you know what? You'll figure it out, Onye. Here we go. And then we just started.
And threw him in.
Yeah, just threw him into the deep end. But we've all known each other for like...
The same
5 years at this point. Yeah, like we've known each other for
Were
a while.
you in our intensive?
No, the one
okay,
before
you just
us.
came.
One
Okay.
before, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you came in a lot though.
I did.
I think you were like one of the only ones that like consistently came from the other intensive.
You like lived at that studio for a while.
Oh, yes, very much so. Yes, I lived there.
Because you were like in the intensive, right? You were in the intensive, plus you'd sit in on the night intensive, plus then you started another class.
I started another class that literally overlapped both intensives. So
Yeah.
then he gave me a key.
And then now you're teaching.
And then now I'm teaching.
Yeah, now you're teaching, which is great. So thanks for being here. Welcome. I mean, we're all friends, so
Onye is also an actor.
yeah, in case you couldn't tell, he's a very successful actor. You work quite a bit. You work in Atlanta, LA, New York.
Whoa.
and yeah.
Oh,
And I guess if we can throw in
bi-coastal, but I'm like, then what does Georgia count it? Like bi-coastal and South.
just
they're two
nationwide, I would
South.
say. Well, because also like North Carolina,
North Carolina.
Mississippi,
New
Orleans. New Orleans.
New
yeah.
Orleans, Alabama.
Yes.
Yes. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, those are all the places I
Tennessee.
pay taxes to.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Have you
Yeah.
done any like Texas, New Mexico, any of that area?
No.
Sounds like a goal for 2022.
Is it? Do we want to?
Do we want to work in the middle of
You're like, I mean, I do,
New
but
Mexico.
also
I mean,
like,
yes. Hey, if you're listening, would love
cast
to.
him?
Hello. Albuquerque.
they do have, what is that? Not Breaking Bad, but
Better Call Saul.
yeah, that film's there, right?
Yes.
Yes, that would be.
I think they're shooting like Walker in Austin or something like that too.
Oh,
What is
really?
Walker?
CW show. It's like a Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh.
Oh, I immediately thought it was Walking Dead. I was like,
Okay, yeah, I know. It sounds like that. I don't know why that's so funny. But
no, us, because we were like, oh, and then we went, oh, like simultaneously.
Well, it's funny because I think I was reading on Deadline. It's their like highest watched show or
my
something.
God.
On
crazy
CW?
like- yeah, I mean,
Wait,
we don't
Walker
have
is?
we don't have fact checkers on this podcast, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, like that
you're
was something
listening,
that like
we might be a
really
fact checker.
we don't have a fact checker, but I think I read that it was like their most watched show, which is wild because I'm like more than like Vampire Diaries and all. Maybe it's like currently.
Probably.
Oh, yeah, I think it's current because
Or like-
Vampire Diaries is like that.
It had to have more.
That and then wasn't Supernatural
Yeah, all
really
of those-
popular
yeah.
for like, I don't know, 20 years or something?
Oh, I think the guy from Supernatural's in it, right?
Oh.
Jensen.
Yes, I think.
I don't know. Don't look at me.
We actually read the trades.
I read the trades that you send me.
I do not read the trades that you send me.
Okay, well, I was under the impression that you also read the trades like I do because she's like, Onye reads it too.
No.
I will, but like not.
No, I said that Onye goes down the rabbit hole to see who got cast and things
That's
that
what
he didn't
I'm on
get.
there for.
No, but he goes on like IMDb, IMDb Pro. Then he's like, oh, who got it? Who are they repped by? Like, what else have they done? Like, he goes down a whole rabbit hole. I don't do any of that because I will lose my mind.
And this is also why Onye works.
It's also why I lose my mind.
Yeah. I don't think that. I mean, sure, yeah. I'm like, I don't think that helps anyone do anything. Do you feel like it helps you do anything? Do you think it helps your work moving forward?
It doesn't.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think it helps. It doesn't help my. That's a good question. It doesn't help my work. I don't think, unless I watch the show and go, "Oh, that's what they meant," because like. I mean, I won't say that I've watched something that I didn't get and then like auditioned for the same thing with new knowledge and then got it. I'll just like watch it and be like, oh, I see. And like the thing that I did in the audition is great, but it's like, oh, that's just like not what they were going for. So typically like when I'll look, it'll be just to be like, who, like what was the missing, like what were the pieces that needed to come together for this to happen?
Interesting, because Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I think what I'm thinking is that usually when I've seen someone who's gotten something that I've auditioned for, I'm like, oh, I was never going to book that. And like, I can't even bother. Like, I shouldn't even bother trying because I see why they booked that person, because they are like, it's an essence thing. So I think that's why that's why I was like, oh, does it actually help you?
It helps me release for sure.
Yes. I know that about you, but I didn't know if it actually like, if you're like, oh, and this informs my acting moving forward.
I won't say that it essentially, I won't say that it necessarily informs it unless during the audition, the tone that I had was just completely not what they ended up going with. Because like, especially if you're auditioning for the first season of something and you don't really know what the tone is because you don't have anything to go back on. When you go back and look at like who booked it, you're like, oh, that's what they meant. Got it. So then like, if you do get any opportunities like audition, like I auditioned for that thing with the creators from Succession and I hadn't actually watched Succession really yet. And like,
that's weird to think about because now you're obsessed with that.
Yeah,
show.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, oh, I actually went back and I watched my audition and I'm like, oh, it was like close-ish. But now that I've like watched a season and a half, I'm like, oh, I completely have a different way that I would approach that audition. It wouldn't be completely different, but it would be a lot more informed.
But I'm really,
But then they booked the person that was already in the show. Like, did it matter? Then you sent me that
same project, same project, and it was like the role I auditioned for got cast by a man, or it got cast.
The person who booked it.
Thank you. My brain, I'm still waking up. I know it's like 11
It's okay. We're all in a bit of a spicy mood today.
We're in a weird mood. Yeah. The person who ended up...
acknowledge it.
Yeah. Real spicy. Enjoy. We're on a bicycle going downhill with no brakes.
Wow.
That's a callback to a dream I had last night.
Yeah.
For our listeners.
Yeah. No one was present for that conversation except the three of us. So hope you enjoy it.
I had a dream that was us on a bicycle going downhill with no brakes. So call back to that no one heard the first part. The role that I auditioned for was booked by like a man who was middle-aged. I was like, they were never gonna pick me.
Who's like on one of the most popular comedy TV shows of all time
and writes on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Like
guys.
there was no version. We
were like COVID backups. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
COVID backups.
But
or like
this is
scheduling
why,
backup. I don't know.
But this is why, in order to keep my sanity, I have to be like, I can't even look into it. I don't need to know. I need to live in just a complete ignorant state.
If that's why I'm going a little more crazy though, because I'm like, oh, I'm going out for all these things. I'm like, they were never going to pick me. And I'm like wasting my time as I do the audition.
I think what it helps me go is like, oh yeah, there are so many pieces that I have absolutely zero control over. And then
you and the control.
It's a thing.
It's a thing lately.
I'm really, really trying to, which I guess it's
really
always
excited for your bicycle dreams.
I know.
I try not to dream. I'm just kidding.
But I do. It's interesting because if I didn't know you, and I just was hearing you for the first time, or even just meeting you, I wouldn't think you were someone who needed to be in control.
Yeah, because it manifests in ways that like I guess aren't necessarily typical. Like for me, it's when I think about, there are things that I can't control, it's from an informational standpoint of going, oh yeah, look at all these different pieces that had to come together. I think I already said that. And the only thing that I can control is like what I'm doing. And I think I forget that because
I'm
in
the
like,
background. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. I think I forget that because I'm like, what? I'm awesome. Why didn't you pick me? What? You know, like, this is great. Like, I feel like this is truthful. And of course, once you feel like your version of truth is, once you feel like it's truthful, you're like, yeah, this is the only version of truth that exists. So obviously, if they pick somebody else, then they're lying. Not really. But yeah, I don't know. So yeah, the control. Kind of. Yeah, kind of. But the control thing is, it's just my version of control is wanting to know more and more and more and more. Yeah. It's
interesting because something we talked about with our guest in the episode prior was that for some reason perfectionists or people with the need for control, I'm thinking would be included in this category, we pick something completely impossible like the arts. I'm sorry, my cat is yowling in the background. If
is that Arya?
It's definitely
not Stevie.
It's no Stevie's hiding under the bed right now.
Yeah, Stevie's like trying to escape his place.
At 11 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, Arya likes to sing the song of her people. So enjoy.
But yeah, we had talked about that a lot of people who are perfectionists, I would even say like are really aim to be high achievers, control freaks, the whole thing, I feel like are somehow drawn to the arts where there is no such thing. There's no such thing as
So you're like chasing
perfection,
like
an impossible dream.
yeah. Is it like you're chasing a horse? You know, I'm not great with. I'm not. I'm really bad.
No, go ahead and finish that.
I feel like I should tell everybody I'm really bad with colloquialisms. I get them all wrong, and I'm like, aren't you chasing like not a Trojan horse? Isn't there like a colloquialism like you're chasing like?
No. I mean, maybe. I just don't know.
I have no idea what you're. That's why I'm like.
I'm sure it
"Please finish
exists. I'm sure it exists.
Okay.
We can fact check that if you're listening. Fact check.
Someone right there like driving their car is like, it's this, you idiots. While they're listening.
Yeah, one of our 3 listeners will let us know.
Yeah, it'll be one of us at this table.
Rachel Lamb will send a full primary source article a primary source, and then like a couple of articles that like will really go deep into it.
Yeah. So actually, I think part of the reason why perfectionists and people who want control come to the arts is because when you're working for somebody else, there's such a lack of control because you have to do what they tell you. Like you have to show up at your shift and like whatever else. But like when you come into something that is essentially you being like self-managed, then you feel like, oh, because I'm managing myself, I have the ability to control whatever outcomes because I have the ability to control what I do. And I think that might be part of it because I know that that's something that I've like come to terms that like a 9-to-5 isn't really something that I ever really want. And I do like the idea that like the things that I am doing are affecting the outcome of my life. It just sucks because you're right. Like in the arts, everything is so subjective and somebody's looking at the thing I'm doing and going, no, not you.
It's also like obnoxious. Like I think about all like the literature papers I've submitted over my lifetime when I was in school, and they're always like, there is no right answer, but also you have a B.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Like fuck off, dude.
Wow.
I'm not still salty about my straight A's getting turned into a B average because of people who told me that my like interpretation was incorrect.
Yeah. It depends, but here's your B.
I do appreciate that insight though, because I've not thought about it that way before, and that feels accurate. But I think that that's what's so frustrating though, is that I think it's a false sense of control.
Yes.
That's what's so upsetting is now, you know, chest deep in this shit. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, it's an illusion. None of it is real.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Which is why I think I try to
remove yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, as much as possible. I mean, both of you know this about me. It's like why you're not on social media either, Rachel Lamb. But like that's why I'm not on social media. I don't get into it. I don't want to. Like I'm thrilled when my people book things. I'm thrilled about all that, but I'm like I don't need to be in the know. I feel like if I get an audition, like I'm gonna do the research for that audition. But once I don't get it, I'm like, meh.
Well, we were talking earlier about pipelines and how it seems like people have different pipelines. And I think part of the thing for me, when I'm quote unquote doing research into people who book the thing that I auditioned for is like, what pipeline are you on? Have you like been doing this for a long time, or do you like have a specific access that like maybe somebody else doesn't have yet?
I feel like it's like Hunger Games, and some of us are in the Capitol, and then others are like in District 13.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that.
And then you're like, how do I get to the Capitol?
Exactly, because then you're going, oh yeah, well, if you are here and these are your resources, what do I have in my control that I can do to have similar resources, right? And I think that's because oftentimes, like if I'm like looking to see who booked whatever, which truthfully I don't do as much as I used to, but it's truly I'm like, who do you know? How did you
and it's like
here?
Their stepdad is like some famous actor,
right? Or like, oh, you got discovered. How did you get? Where were you? Do I need to go to that same place? How did you get discovered? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which, in a lot of ways, is like obviously not the healthiest thing, and it also doesn't allow me to go, well, look at what I've done so far, and there's probably somebody looking at me like, who are you? How did you do those things? You know what I mean? So yeah, at the end of the day, it's like nothing is real at all.
But I also think if that works for you and like reading deadline every day works for you, that works. Like I don't think everyone's going to be the same as me. Like again, you two know me incredibly well. Like of all the people in this world, you two and like 3 other people know me the most and the best.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
I mean, listen.
I'm like ready for the trophy.
Yeah. A lot of information, but these 2 people just drove me to urgent care. Well, yeah, listen, these people like have seen me go through the fucking ringer in life and also like this year and the last week. So they know.
Real excited for the Oscar speech, because we've been at the bottom already. So
Right.
can't wait for the top.
But I feel like not everyone's going to do it my way, but I just like, and maybe that's my form of control too, though, of being like, I'm going to control what comes in, what the intake is for things. But I wish I could research things and not get angry. And it's not angry because I didn't get it. It's like angry because I'm like, yeah, how did you get there? And I think I've followed all those steps before. Like we were saying earlier, Richly, I'm like, we followed all of the rules and it didn't really get me anywhere. But as soon as I stopped following the rules and just did whatever I wanted, I was like, oh, well, now I'm finding success. So I'm like, I don't even want to fuck with the juju of it.
I feel like the reason why I look into it for my personality is it gives me like sometimes I'll do something and then she'll ask me, she's like, how do you feel about that? I'm like, it's fine. And she's like, no, do you want to redo it? I'm like, no, it's fine. I'm like, if I don't get the role, that's not why. Like whatever it is that I think that I can tweak or do, I'm like, as long as it's like, you access all of your training, you do the thing. And I'm like, that's what it is. Because like at the end of the day, we look and it's like, oh, this completely different type or like this essence or whatever. Yeah. And so I like doing it because it helps me create, like, I think I actually had a really horrendous callback recently. And it was because the director on the Zoom call was just a fucking dick. And I remember sitting there being like, I think the reason I'm so angry is because I have so much self-respect because I do read that stuff and I know it's not me. Like I know I've been in it long enough that I'm like, I know it's not me. It's you. These are the personalities you deal with. And I think that like reading that kind of stuff gives me that strong where I can like be like, no, this is not like, I actually walked out of an open mic because I got bumped 20 times in an hour from my slot. And I was like, I'm like, and then I was leaving, they tried to like put me up and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to go to bed. Like if you wanted to put me up, you could have put me up within my slot or any of the other 19 times before this last one. But I'm like, the fact that I'm walking out right now on my time, I'm like, you can't salvage this at this point. Like, and I don't need to do 2 minutes here. Like, I feel like that's certain things like that kind of behavior 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been me. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to jump. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to make every fucking dick director like me. Like, I'm going to do all of these things. And now I'm just like, I feel like between the reading of that stuff and all the experience, I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore.
And for the record, I just want to say, because no one knows who we are unless they are family members listening, we all worked a lot this year. Like we worked more than the average actor, and 10, 15 years ago me would have done anything
to be in this position
and to book one of the things that I booked this year or to audition for one of the things. Yeah. So I
because we're in that District 13 pipeline.
So I think it's worth saying, because just to have full context, because and you know this, because even when we were in LA taking classes and they're like, you get to the next level, quote unquote, and then you have more complaints and you get to the next level. And I'm like, my issue though my issue at the end of the day isn't not booking, right? Like I want to book, but I want to be treated like a person with dignity and self-respect and be respected by others. And I feel like a lot of times that just starts to go, I don't know where. Not on every project, not on every audition, but after a while it just starts to wear on you. And that's with people who are booking more than the average actor.
And I also think it's harder with our age as well, because we're like, I'm in my early 30s. I have friends who are like, and they're, they've been a doctor for 4 years. They're doing other things with this phase in their life. And I'm still, chasing the dream, this is what living your dreams looks like.
I know. Well, when we were driving, if I can just give this quick side
context.
note. So I had been in and out of the hospital over the last week, and then I flew to Atlanta early because shout out to Shu. Shu helped me get into an urgent care facility. And so Onye helped me get from New York. We were on the same flight to Atlanta, and then we were driving. So I was like dying. And so we were driving to this urgent care, and I was in the front seat dying, and Anye's driving, and Rachel Lamb's in the back seat, and she was like, I just want to qualify for SAG health insurance. Like, I don't even need the serious regular. I just want the SAG health insurance. And I like turned around in the car and was like, I mean, this is what it looks like when you've made it. This is what you're shooting for. So it's just
and this all came from an improv teacher that she had
at
a well-known improv school in LA. And he was on a house team, which is like what you aspire to. And it can take some actors like years to get on a house team in LA. And he's like, this is what it looks like to have made it as he's teaching the class. And I'm like, even like with stand up, I'm like, this, my best case scenario is sleeping on a bus at 33. I'm like, what are we fighting for here?
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I like it, not because I like.
This is why we're always having life crises, because we're like, do we? I mean,
but when people are trying to, be like, oh, I'm going to stop you from, doing the stand up or like whatever it is that they're doing. I'm like, look, my best case scenario is sleeping on a bus. Like, so I'm like, oh no, you're going to take it away from me.
Oh no.
But yeah, I think that we can all relate that we are just a little tired. Also, this time of year,
this happens. We get
like,
this bitchy about it this time of the
year.
As
soon as daylight savings, you're like, oh, just throw everything away.
Yeah.
Like it's 2:00 and the sun is setting. What are we doing right now?
Oh, it's worse in New York for you guys too, because it gets dark at like 3:30 in New York for you non-Big Apple dwellers.
It gets dark so early.
It's really disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's like crazy to get on the subway and then like 15 minutes later, the sun is just gone. What?
I know.
And it's colder because the sun's gone.
Yeah. I was like, why is a 50 degrees in Atlanta completely different than a 50 degrees in New York?
It's the wind.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very windy with like the buildings and everything.
And the
like,
humidity.
Around. Yeah.
I feel like, or lack thereof. I mean, I guess New York is surrounded by water, so maybe it is more.
Oh, I guess technically it's an island.
I don't know what it is. All I know is that it's very cold there.
I was just in Wilmington yesterday. It was 76.
It's going to be 68 today.
Yeah, it was 76. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm glad I wore this undershirt. I'd be sweating straight through my costume. Like, what is going on?
I mean, I guess this is why like people from like Canada snowbird in the South, because they're like, 76 degrees in December.
I get it.
Gosh.
So.
But yeah, this is what it looks like to make it. So then I guess the question is that like, how do we continue finding fulfillment? And I think part of the frustration is that like you're living and you're doing things in your life that you feel like are fulfilling. And then it feels sometimes like it does not gel with the thing that you have created, like with the success that you've had. It's like, it's almost like you're specifically being targeted. It's like, hey, stop living. Stop doing that thing that is helping you get through the day and be a slave to the thing that you're chasing. And then you don't even get the thing. And now you spent all this time not
and nothing
living.
to show for it.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the answer? What do we do? Because the reality is like, once we are at that place where, money's not an object, you can live wherever you want, you can work, and like, what are the issues they're going to be? Are they going to be the same?
I'm like, we always joke about how I'm like, yeah, you're going to be a series regular, and be like, but on this network and not this network. Or I'm like, it's not like this Emmy Award winning. It's not the #1 show on Netflix. It's not this or that. It's just a procedural show, whatever it is for you.
I've had friends book series regulars that say that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I booked this, but like this other show is coming out that I'd be perfect for. And I'm like, yeah. I get it. I get it.
I saw this video of this girl breaking down her series regular pay and was like, yeah, so like I live in Toronto and like I do this and I have this, but then I pay my publicist this much, I pay my manager this much, taxes I pay this much. So like at the end of the day, and like it was still a substantial amount of money, right? Like more money than I've seen. But she's like, at the end of the day, it's, I still like, I'm not making and I'm not living in the way that people think I'm living. It's like now I can afford a loft without breaking myself or whatever, which at the time I was like, girl, what are you complaining about? And I'm not saying that I can relate, but I'm also like, yeah, her reality is this, and these are the issues that she's facing in her reality. And maybe there was like a little self-awareness that she didn't have. Maybe there was. I don't want to eat my words, right? But yeah, it's that thing of like, yeah, you're going to get the things, and then whatever problems you have at that level are going to be your reality. Like that's going to be, and it's going to feel, like when you're in middle school, you think everything is the end of the world. And now you look back at these like 10-year-old children, you're like, God, shut up.
Because your context is wider.
It's just,
like their world is smaller.
Yeah.
But I also, yes. And I also feel like part of it is that everyone is telling you how grateful you should be all the time and that you're not allowed to have problems. And I was one of those people that was pointing at people working going, you shouldn't even be complaining. You have XYZ. So what? And I don't even have an agent, or I have an agent and they don't send me out.
Like you're complaining about your co-star booking. I would love to have a co-star booking or whatever.
Which is very valid. But I think that part of it that is frustrating is that you're not allowed to complain, quote unquote. And
then also you wake up and you're like, I'm turning 33 this month. And I'm like, I mean, like, even if it was like a regular job that you can go to, but it's like the thing that you've been working towards for 10 years, I'm like, there's a certain amount of like, that would be nice.
And people are constantly telling us that we're replaceable. I don't feel like that happens in other jobs as much. I mean, I think it does.
Oh yeah,
but not
this
in the same way.
callback with this dick director. If it was any other interview for a job, I would be like, "You're unprofessional and fuck off." Like any other scenario that's not like, "Oh well, I'm reflecting on my agents and I'm reflecting on this," and it's like, I mean, even though it's like a non-union commercial and it pays this much and whatever, I like can't whatever. But I feel like in a normal scenario, people would not put up with that. People would not put up with someone like that talking to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's part of what's tricky is that there's this constant push and pull of trying to be grateful. And you are genuinely grateful. But when everyone's just telling you that you're only allowed to be grateful, it just wears you down a little bit.
Yeah.
Our life is so hard.
I'm like you and like the less than 15% of people that qualify for self-health insurance annually.
And I'm about to use that shit so hard.
Yeah, you are.
Do it for the rest of us, you know.
I will.
Can't.
But the reason I wanted to bring you on, not just because we're all friends, but also because this is a podcast about dance, and you have a really interesting relationship with dance because you come from the drum corps world. Mm-hmm. And
a little background, Onye has actually helped us edit some of our videos because where I struggle with lining up music and video, Onye is excellent because of his drum corps background. So go on.
Yes, incredible musicality.
Oh my gosh.
I've learned so much about music from Onye.
Yeah.
But, beats dropping on like the 1 3s and 7s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. And so I would just love for you to talk about your background with dance. And obviously that will include some of your background with drum corps if you want to share that.
Yeah. Also, your mug matches the rest of your outfit.
It really does. You're coordinated.
That actually was not intentional. I just wanted it because it had a cat on it. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Also, your hat has a cat. Okay, I'm deflecting.
I think it's a husky, yeah?
It's a wild cat.
Oh, okay, great. Anyways.
And your mic is blue too?
Yeah, you got the only like blue and silver.
And your nail, okay, all right, I'm still deflecting. Yeah, so drum corps is the biggest thing that absolutely nobody knows about. Because it just, where do I start?
What is drum corps?
Yeah, what is drum corps? So drum corps has its roots in military band. So it's very regimented. At least that's where it started out. It was very regimented. And over the last few decades, it has become theater on a football field. And the whole point of it is you and it used to be 135. Now I think it's 150. Actually, now I think it's 154. I'm not really sure how many people are allowed on the field now. You're putting together a show with music, right? There's the horn section, the color guard, and then you have like the percussion section. Those are like the 3 main sections. And you're putting together a show, and you typically will have like a theme that you're exploring. A lot of the famous drum corps shows are based on, like musicals or like Phantom of the Opera is like a really big one that people will revisit, or like James Bond is one that you'll revisit. Like I can name like literally 3 James Bond shows, and 2 of them are from like high schools, like 20 miles from here, so drum corps is, for all intents and purposes, advanced marching band.
What makes it more advanced?
The amount of work that you actually have to put in. You typically, like my experience was, you audition in November and you audition once a month until like January, and then you come back in April and you do 1 camp with everybody, and then you move in with the entire corps in May, and you do like a 4-week, 14-hour a day rehearsal where you are getting in shape. You're learning the show music. You're learning like the drill, which is like essentially your positions on the field. Like you're learning all these things, and then you go on like a 33 show tour around the country. And it's essentially you just like sleeping on a bus,
living your dream.
Seriously, sleeping on gym floors, you know what I mean? And touring America's football fields, And it's crazy because like dozens of thousands of people will come to a show, right? They have the World Championships at Lucas Oil Stadium, and the stadium is completely packed, right? So everybody knows about it, but also nobody knows about it.
How did you get into it?
Oh God. I as you said, I've been a musician forever. And I can't look at Mallory right now because anytime somebody asks me like an origin question, she's always like, well, I was born on this date and this kind of, yeah. So like, I'm not going to
I feel like you've tightened your set, but it used to be like these 20-minute, like 20 minutes is not an exaggeration. Like we would be on like panels and stuff, and he'd be like, I will. I'm like, sip your water and I'll come for you real quick, because you'll be like, they'll be like, oh, so Onye, how'd you get into acting, or how'd you get, and you'll be like, well, so in 2013, and that is not an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration. And he'll be like, you know, I had been doing band, and my brother had actually been an
can't wait till your Comic-Con panels.
Oh God. So to answer your question, I've been a musician essentially all my life. And when I got into middle school, I started doing concert band, and then got into high school, and I joined the marching band. And during marching band, I got introduced to drum corps from somebody who was in the percussion section, and it was like the loudest thing I'd ever heard. And I was like, this is really cool. And I was like, what is this? And that was during the time of Google Video. So I'm really aging myself here. And I just remember like one day after, I think we had a show, I just like stayed on Google Video and just typed in all the drum corps things that I'd ever known and like, ever heard about, and just like watched it for like a week, like straight. And then in like 2007, I decided I was going to audition for a group that like the people who ran the percussion section at my high school, they were also running, which then led me to audition for another drum corps called the Blue Coats. And they are like huge in drum corps, right? They have won and they've medaled and all these other things. So long story short, I got in because I was in marching band, and I saw it and I liked it and I wanted to do it. So like practiced a lot. And when I auditioned, they liked me. And yeah, and then I marched at the Blue Coats for 4 years. And then I've done other stuff outside of that. But yeah, that's how I got in. Wow. Haven't told that one in a long time.
It does make sense that they're like coming from the marching band world and then just going.
Yeah. It's the craziest thing in the world.
Because, you know, like kids wake up and they're like, I want to do football. I'm like, who woke up and was like, I want to do drum corps?
Oh gosh. I hope those kids are free. Like, it's because like drum corps in all drum corps really like helped me become the person that I am in a lot of ways, and I do not regret any time that I spent. And it was really hard, and it was really expensive, and like I'm not kidding. Like I marched, tenors, which is 45 pounds, like on the small of your back.
You're like, and I'm 2 inches shorter than I'd like to be.
Okay, but my mom actually thinks that it stunted my growth.
I know. So we've actually talked about this.
Like my sister,
this comes up like at almost every body slate when he has to say his height, and he's like, God, I could have been 6'1".
I could have, because my brother's like 6 foot something. He says he's not 6'1", but I think he's 6'1", and my sister's 5'9". And I just remember coming home from one summer and seeing my brother and be
that was the year you were supposed to grow.
Seriously, I was like 5. I think I was 5'7" when I got into high school, and then like by the time I was out of high school, I was like 5'9", which I was 17. And I've grown like an inch and a half since then. Like I'm like 5'11" very comfortably. That's it. Which 5'11" is like the height that people say that like, oh, if you're saying that you're 5'11", you're actually 5'9". Like I'm actually like 5'11". So I just want to, for all y'all who are 5'11".
That's funny. I was actually just thinking, I was like, is Lucas, my husband, 5'11" or 5'9"? I'm like, no, he's 5'9".
Oh.
But it's funny how you would think those are the same.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, like if it's not 6 foot, then you're short to a lot of people. Anyway, yeah, I mean it's hard because then you're outside. You're outside for however many hours during the day.
Oh, I thought you were talking about height.
No.
You're like, it's hard because you're outside, and I was like, where is he going with this?
No,
we're gonna have to edit this out.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so it's hard. I mean, my first summer, I wasn't like overweight, but I lost 40 pounds, and I didn't even know I had lost weight. Like we had a free day in Washington, D.C., and I went to the Smithsonian, and they were like, this is how much you weigh on the moon. And I was like, I wonder how much I weigh here. And I was like 180 pounds. I haven't been 180 pounds since like my sophomore year of high school. It was crazy. I came home and my mom thought I was like hungry and dirty brown, right? It was just, there was so much. And my head was huge. My body, there were so many things. And then I went back 3 times. Yeah.
I feel like the way that like some kids grow up like doing Broadway, I feel like this is just as intense. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like
yes.
It's like you're on like a professional like production schedule.
Yeah.
And you're, not a fully grown adult.
Right.
Have you seen drum corps shows, Rachel?
Only because I had to look it up after you're like, yeah, Onye and drum corps. And I'm like, what is that?
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Because Anya, you introduced drum corps to me, and I think it's so beautiful, especially old school drum corps.
LOL, old school as in like before 2013.
I love like early to mid 2000s.
Yeah.
That's like where we love dance too. We love a lot of old hip hop.
Yeah.
So to answer your, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But to answer your question, with that, like as time moved on, it became less and less like militaristic. Cool. So it wasn't just the color guard that was doing dance, right? Now you have everybody in the drum corps participating in like movement, and with that came a specific type of training that you just have to have, right? Because at the end of the day, it is just professional band. So like think of what your generic band kid looks like, and it's like, great, now do some across the floors and look good doing it
with a 35-pound drum.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And then you also have to look like the 79 other people who are doing it, right? So like around the time that I started, 2010, 2011, 2012, we had people who, you know, instead of doing like PT, like instead of doing like exercises for the last hour of the day, we would do dance block. And in this dance block, we were introduced to, I mean, really, really cool stuff. But it was like, you know, we were stretching, LOL is cool. But we were introduced to like a lot of like ballet techniques, because the way that you move around the field, instead of it being as militaristic, now, you know, everybody's doing around the field, because it's the best way for you to like carry weight without actually like affecting your core or like affecting the instrument that you're supposed to be playing, whether it's a horn or if it's a drum. So you're learning how to use your body, and the way that you're learning to do that is through dance techniques. Yeah, and like it has very much become theater on a field, musical theater on a field. So like it's not just the color guard's job. Like everybody in the entire drum corps has to be able to have some version of movement knowledge in order for everybody to be moving well, and for everybody to move the same, because you know you get scored on that kind of stuff. So
because you do like isolations and tendus and pliés as part of your dance block, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like even some of the choreography that you do while you're playing music is based on dance. I can't tell you how many times it's like, okay, and now we're going to go into a second position plie. Here we go. You know, and then on this move, okay, now we're going to go into lunge. Okay, great. Awesome. Cool. Now you're going to do this en croix. All right, here we go. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is like while you're playing like ridiculously like intricate music, whether it's a horn or a drum, or if you're spinning a flag or, you know, whatever other equipment. So that's how I got introduced into dance. And it was just like a new way for me to use my body. Before doing drum corps, like I was an athlete, like I played soccer, I wrestled. But I really gained a respect for people who dance, because I'm like, this is hard. My hips don't turn out in that way. You want me to do what now? No, I'm sorry. But
I also imagine like the spacing is hard with other people, because even in like classes that I've taken that are beginner level, occasionally a teacher will be like, okay, you're this line, and then you guys are walking and crossing, and you have like a couple things like that to do, and everyone just loses their mind in like a beginner class. I'm like, I can't imagine being on a field with all these people, and then spacing is a huge thing, and like a formation, plus doing that with a drum, all of the stuff. Yeah,
because now it's no longer, you're just going to march from this point of the field to the other. It's like, you're going to march, and then you're going to do like a little saute. And if you don't, you know, and then like, if you have it, you're going to do like a leap. And if y'all don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember there was a show in 2011 where before we ever put on our drum, we had like an entire like dance thing that we were doing. And I remember looking at photos and being like, wow, we look awful. Granted, this was like really early on, but I'm like, oh yeah, this is,
you know how we feel about the camera observing our movement.
and it was like, if you didn't take the dance training aspect of it seriously, and by seriously, I don't necessarily mean like mentally, I'm like, if you didn't practice all of these things, right? If you didn't practice your leaps, if you didn't practice opening up your hips, even when you were supposed to be like relaxing, right? If you didn't think about those things often, it showed up on the field. And we're all wearing the same uniform. Well, at least back then. Now things are a little bit different, but we're all wearing the same uniforms at the time. And, you know, we have this choreography. And if the choreography doesn't look good, it's because you didn't try hard enough, right? Or you don't know how to use your body, or you don't like have awareness of what it's supposed to be doing, you know? So I gained a lot of respect about like, not just the physicality of what you have to be able to do as a dancer, but also like the attention to detail for you to be able to do it, and then also look like the person next to you, and then also you can't be dead faced, and then also you have to perform, and then also you have to hit this stop. You know what I'm saying? There's just so many layers that I think it's one of those things where like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And I loved it. So
I was going to ask because you said 2010, 2011. What were your initial thoughts when they first started introducing dance and dance blocks into drum corps?
Wow, what a question. I think I was just so green that I didn't really know, right? I was like 17 years old, and I was like, I was introduced to drum corps in like 2005, and then by like 2010 I was doing it. Really by 2007, but 2010 I was doing it at like a really, really high level. So I still, in the grand scheme of things, didn't really know anything. And I was just like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. Because that's the mentality that you have to have. I know that there were some people who kind of had like dissenting opinions about it, because it's like, well, I'd rather just be drumming. But I think initially it was fun because it was like, great, dance block. We don't have to run 40 minutes, or we don't have to do push-ups, or we don't have to, push that sled or whatever. We get to do the quote unquote easy thing that is dance block. And I don't think it was easier, but it was more fun because it engaged a part of my brain creatively, and a part of my body that I hadn't gotten a chance to engage at all.
And we feel this way about dance too, where we can be in a dance class for like 2.5 hours and enjoy the whole thing. But if I had to do like that much running, I would hate it.
It's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because then as an adult, you started taking like dance classes.
Yeah.
When did you start doing that?
Yeah. What made you want to do that?
Because you aged out at 20.
I aged out at 20. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you did BDI the next year. So you stopped performing in drum corps when you were 24? So
I aged out. Yeah. So there's drum corps and there's indoor drumline. They're all offshoots of the same thing, but you have different age outs. In indoor drumline, I aged out at 23. I had stopped doing drum corps when I was 21. I taught in 2014, the year after I turned 23. And then the next year I went to Europe with BDI. Yeah. So I officially stopped performing in marching band when I was like 20 in 2015.
Okay.
So I started taking dance classes in between my first and second years of drum corps in 2010 and 2011.
Really? Like,
yeah.
I don't want to say recreationally, but like that wasn't part.
I started taking ballroom dance at Mercer.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was like one of my electives. Like I took ballroom dance, which was really cool. And then I also took ballet. Oh. And that's where, because I was like, oh, I really enjoyed the work that we had to do, at Blue Coats. And I was like, I wonder. And then I had to take like an elective because I didn't know what I was doing with my life back then. And I was like,
weren't you pre-med?
Oh God, something like
weren't
that.
we all?
I was like, yeah, right. I was like pre-med. Then I was like, I'm going to go to law school. And then I took a law class. I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Wow, it's like every actor's journey. Doctor, lawyer, actor,
and then I was
parental disappointment.
Nice. Yeah.
So you took it because you were like, oh, this is something to do and it will help my drum corps?
Yeah, and it was just generally interesting. I thought it was cool. And God, it was so hard. But it was cool. Like ballroom dance was awesome. I think I just really enjoyed being able to use my body in a way I'd never used it before. And ballroom dance was great. And then I ended up like doing the ballroom dance club at Mercer. So like outside of my elective, I was then like choosing to put myself in those, classes where we're going to learn different types of ballroom. Like,
did you do Latin ballroom too?
Did we do Latin?
Because Lucas did Latin ballroom in college, and he was like one of 2 guys in the class.
Oh, I do remember that being a thing. It was like me and like maybe 2 other people, and then like 17 girls.
And someone like made fun of him. This is off after he already got out of the military, and he was taking it because it was cheaper than us going to take classes for our wedding.
Oh, wow.
So
Lucas
he just,
is Rachel Lamb's husband.
Yeah, Lucas. Yeah, I think I keep saying Lucas, my husband, but anyway. So he, after he got out of the military, went to a junior college and like as his elective took ballroom dance, and he was one of 2 guys. And someone in his math class was like some 18-year-old was like trying to make fun of him for like taking dance. He's like, why? He's like, because I want to go and like learn how to dance and not be this guy in the club. Like,
Rachel Lamb's doing like the
Fist
Jersey
pump.
Shore fist pump. Yeah.
And then everyone laughed, and then that kid was embarrassed. And he's like, well, don't make fun of people for wanting to dance.
Yeah, don't be a bully.
So seriously.
Ballroom Dance Club. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Tangent,
Ballroom Dance Club. It was really cool. I was like, I really enjoyed it. And it actually did make me more confident. And I think ballet like changed the way that I move through space.
Like as a human?
As a human, for sure. Because I am naturally clumsy. Mallory's laughing. I am naturally clumsy.
And we also ended our friendship over the hot yoga. So, I mean, this is why I'm stunned that you did ballet, because I just remember you going to hot yoga.
It was the heat, I think.
It was the heat.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story. We won't get into that. But,
yeah. Still almost friendship ending.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Wow.
Interesting. And do you feel like when you say more confident, like as a human ballroom made you more confident?
Yeah.
Or interesting.
Like it
like the posturing, or like
I don't know what it. I think just because I learned a lot more about what I could do like what my body can do. Do you know what I mean? And like it got to the point where it became less something that I had to like actively think about. And because we have an instructor that is always talking about what technique is. It's like you're at the ballet bar and you're pointing, and then technique is one day you lift your foot and your toe just naturally points. And that, I mean, not the pointing thing, but like there are things as far as like, oh, my core is going to do this here. Oh, I'm going to isolate here. And like I would think about those just because I'm a nerd. And then at some point it just like permeated my being. And I would say that it made me more confident because it was like, for some reason, it felt like I had like a cheat code to moving.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like something that like, and then you can see people, like I'm sure you all know, but you can recognize, you're like, oh, you feel like you know how to carry yourself in a specific way. And then you're like, oh yeah, of course, because you're a dancer.
Mallory said that I carry myself like a dancer now. I almost cried.
Wow.
And then also I'm taking jujitsu and they're always telling me to stop pointing my toes when I'm not trying to point them.
That's hilarious. What a compliment.
Because you have to like leg curl everything to like engage and like not break your foot in a lot of ways. And
I would love to see a ballerina taking jujitsu. I just want to see what that.
And I'm not even a ballerina.
I know, she's not a ballerina, but she is a dancer.
Handful of jazz classes. Yeah, I think it's funny because I even told them that I'm like, I've only really done hip hop and a handful of jazz classes, but apparently it's stuck. That's not Southern stuck.
So you did that in college, and then when did you start? But then you transferred.
Then I transferred.
And did you keep dancing?
I didn't keep dancing. No. I transferred and then I stopped dancing. The extent of my dancing was essentially just like whatever I was doing in band. And that was the other cool thing. The fact that I took ballet and the fact that I took ballroom, I just like understood what my body was supposed to do. So when I went back and I was doing like indoor drumline, which at the time was a little bit more quote unquote theatrical than like drum corps, there is a lot of dance and like especially contemporary dance elements in indoor drumline. Because it is a more intimate space, and where in a drum corps you have like 160 people, indoors maybe only have 30 people on the floor. So you really have to have like a lot of attention to detail. And the thing that you find that is like the most effective is clean movement that is outside of the realm of normal movement as a human. And it's not that crazy, but you look and you see some of the groups, which are all fantastic, but like you watch and you go, oh, that's just this. Oh, that's just that. But when you get 30 people to do it really well, and the 1,000 people who are watching don't know how to do it, it's like super, super effective. You know what I mean? So like my knowledge and the stuff that I learned through drum corps, through dance, through the extracurriculars I took at Mercer, helped me with the choreography that I learned when I was doing indoor. And it also helped me like choreograph some, because I was like, yeah, I have an entirely different vocabulary to pull from, because I know that I just know something, or I know how to clean something. I go, yeah, I can say, hey, when you do this plie, you need to stay in the toaster. You know what I mean? And like people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, how do you not know? Oh, because you didn't do that. Oh, got it. And now you just have a vocabulary that you can like communicate more with.
And I think that's what's so great when you take dance classes, especially ones that are not the same or in your comfort zone always, is that you are building that vocabulary. Yes. And then you come into a different space where people don't have that same vocabulary, and you make different shapes. You make different shapes in different classes from different teachers. So this is why I'm always like, just because it says hip hop, it could be different, because it could be like pop and locking hip hop. It could be like breakdancing hip hop. It could be like 90s hip hop. Yeah. It could be groovy. It could be like a lot of like tick, 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 tick. Yeah. It could be a lot of different things. And so but you're making different shapes in those different classes. So even if you're not taking that and choreographing on dancers, which you could argue that drum corps participants are dancers of not in the same way that like when I grew up competing, like,
Sure.
but they are dancers.
Yeah.
But even if you're going to something like yoga or something like Pilates, like your body is used to making different types of shapes. So you're able to bring that and apply it when you come somewhere else.
Yeah. I'll never forget the day that I thought about doing a plie in the weight room. Like literally just being in like an open first and going, oh, I wonder what it would be like if I tried to do squats like this. And like there's an entire like plie exercise where you do like you do the plie where you just get to your knees and then you go into your groin where you like your heels come off the ground. And I'm like, oh, now I can think about doing my squats, right? If I'm on like a Smith machine that's like assisted, I can put my feet in front of me and literally do the plie exercise and engage muscles in my legs. That allows me to just like exercise differently. And so it was just like a really cool moment of like, oh yeah, that thing that I learned on a football field in 2010 is like helping me in the weight room in 2017. Because I had access to it. And you know, anybody who's lifting weights could like figure that out, but it was just way easier for me to like find it because I'm like, yeah, this is exactly like that exercise that we did. Right. Obviously I'm not doing anything with my arms. I'm just trying to like survive this, however much I'm lifting, but yeah, it's really cool to find those similarities and see how you can apply stuff that you've learned to things that you don't think you could apply it to, and then like find how it works.
Mm. And then you transferred and you were only dancing in drum corps. Mm-hmm. And then when did you start taking classes again on your own time?
Then I started taking classes on my own time in 2000.
He references things always in years. It's funny to me.
Because
it like categorizes it.
I've done
it's like the iPhone albums.
Well, I think about it in years because for so long, when you do drum corps, you do indoor, like you have a different show every year. So I go, what year was that? What show was I doing? Oh yeah, that was that show. That was 2009, right? So like obviously I haven't done a show since then. So I guess I started. No, actually, I'll do it this way. 2015 was the last time that I marched. And I think I started taking classes early 2016 or early 2017.
That's about the time we met.
I know you were in classes in 2017 because we were in classes together.
So it was definitely like late 2016, early 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was because I had just started my journey into acting. And the only friends that I really had were people that I did band with. And band is one of those huge, tiny worlds where like, I know somebody in every single state for sure. And like at least 16 different countries because of band. Right. But not all of them live here, you know? So like I started, acting and I was like, I really want to get like actor friends. And then I saw that there was like a lot of people who acted who were also dancers. So I was like,
what a mistake. Just kidding.
So then it was, okay, great. Now I really want to make dancer friends because dancer friends seems like they're the really, really cool people. Right. Okay, Mallory. But like, that's like how we met. Like I started going to classes that we
did not meet a dance class.
No, we didn't. But I know that you were I wasn't aware of that you.
Ether.
Yeah. So I started taking classes sort of on my own when I met, like I have a buddy, like a mutual friend that we have, who teaches dance. And he was like, yeah, you should come to my hip hop class. I was like, okay. Which I went and I was like, this is cool because my training says that I have to like hit and whatever. So like I found a kinship with hip hop dancing. But the thing that people would always say is like, yeah, you got to loosen up your back, dog. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But, I've had 10 years of 45 pounds just sitting on my back, so like that was the whole journey. But that's when I started, was when I started like meeting actors who were dancers, and I would take like a hip hop class on Saturdays.
That's how I would never have taken a class if it wasn't for the actor dancer friends that we knew from the studio who like also taught. And they're like, just come. And I'm like, but I don't dance. They're like, yeah, just come out. Like nowhere else, I feel like, not in LA or New York, where everyone like we're thinking of taking like, a New York class together that she goes to. And I would never have considered that had I not taken class in Atlanta, because we happen to have friends that like also taught and made it so accessible. And they're like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Just come to a class.
Yeah.
I'm like, with all the other professional dancers in it.
Right. And that would be the crazy thing, because it is an access thing, right?
Yeah.
When you do feel like you have access, you're like, oh yeah, in this class.
I could be the worst, but at least I know the teacher and they know that I don't do this.
Right. Or like I'm learning the same combo as this person who danced with Beyonce or, whatever.
Oh, interesting. Was that something you thought about? Like
no, because I had no idea.
Oh, I was going to say, what were you expecting when you went and how did you feel after you were in your first class?
I was terrified.
You were?
I was terrified for my first class.
Whoa.
Absolutely. Because I was like, I don't know any of these people and I want them to like me.
I was going to say it's because you wanted them to like you,
right? I wanted them to like me because I wanted friends, right? I still want friends.
This is so endearing, Onye. I'm like,
but
this is why we're friends. He just wanted me to like him. I was like, I like it. I like all people to approach me and be like, I want you to like me. Okay.
It was also like a shiny new thing, which I like. I feel like I'm just like naturally curious and like I like learning stuff, which ties into the control thing and like looking up things on IMDb. But anyway, yeah. So I was really scared because I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. Like, and I don't want to do it poorly. I had no concept of who was in the class except for the person that I knew who was teaching it. And then after the first class, I was like, oh, I'm not awful at this. I like hit a thing. I was like, okay, all right. Like my training in drum corps, like the militaristic aspect of it, like lent itself to, yeah, so we're going to hit on this and boom. And then on the and I'm like, I know what that means. I know what it means to hit on the end. Yeah. Cause I've been doing that for 20 years now. You know what I mean?
And you do have choreography, like or memorizing choreography experience from drum corps. So at least you're like, your brain's like, oh, this is what kicks on to start doing the thing.
Yeah. It was using those same muscles. So yeah, that's what it felt like when I first started. And then like, it was really cool. A guy who I did drum corps with, also started kind of doing the same thing. He like started doing like dance stuff. And then he like, cause he lives in Athens, or he lived in Athens. Actually, I'm not sure where he is now, but we like marched at Atlantic West, which was the indoor drumline. And then we also marched at Blue Coats together. And then like one day we like took a dance class together and he was so much better than me. He's just, just like, cause he just has like, it's like this little white boy. He has so much swagger. And I'm like, I don't understand how you're so good at this, Chase. But he just was, he like got the choreography really quickly.
Yes, musicality, which I don't really have.
You're okay. But it was cool being like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Here's this person that like I also know. And he's like out here learning the same thing. And I don't know. It was cool. It was like a really cool feeling of community. I mean, I eventually started making friends, which is like, the whole point of everything.
The goal.
Right. You know what I mean? But
and you're a great dancer. I wouldn't have known that you do have a background in dancing, so it makes sense. But I remember seeing you in class and I was like, oh yeah, this kid can dance. Like you're a good dancer.
Wow. Thanks.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we've talked about this a lot, I think in the last year, that even as an actor, I feel like you access things a lot through physicality and movement, which is really interesting to me because I don't feel like that's how I access characters or access scenes or anything like that. And I feel like you very much so are physicality oriented.
Yes. I learned that I am one of the tactile people that likes learning by touch and learning by like doing. Somebody called me out, especially since this pandemic. I was walking somewhere and I think I saw a light and I touched it. They're like, why did you have to touch that? And I was like, I don't know. I was just really compelled to. But anyway, yeah. I do feel like I access things with my body because at the same time I was taking the intensive. I took that class that was essentially like a scene study movement class and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And
well, what's interesting is that, so you're an Enneagram 9.
Yes.
Rachel M's a 6. I'm a 3. We're the nice little triad. 369.
I have a personality test called the Enneagram that we always talk about.
You'll hear it on every episode. But 9s are
in the body.
The body. Yeah. Like right in the middle. Like mine is the heart or emotions and Rachel M's is the brain. The head. The mind. The head.
In acting class when they're like, get out of your head. I'm like, I can't. I live there.
But it does make sense then that you access things through your body and through touch and physicality because that is, And then also it's like why you feel sleepy a lot, right? Like, cause you're like, you're so present in your body that you're like, wait, everything takes so much energy and I'm engaging everything and I'm accessing and I'm feeling and I'm sensing through my body.
Yeah. I actually have never put those two things together before. That was really cool. Yeah. I took my booster shot for the vaccine and I was tired, but like I didn't like feel anything. But then I realized that I was tired when I got the vaccine. So I'm like, oh, this is just what this feels like. But I wasn't really tired. Anyway, all that to say, I was like, yeah, I am very much in tune with like what my body is doing and like what it needs. And a lot of times it's like, hey, you're sleep deprived. Go to sleep.
If only Mallory's body would.
I know. This is
like you're sleep deprived, but also stay up because you're not doing enough.
I know. Welcome to 3 Live. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm like, well, you know what? If I sleep, I'll have enough energy to do things.
Some people live their life like
No,
this.
but then you wake up and you're like, I'm still tired. I think I'm going to have some chicken and go to sleep.
That's exactly, yeah. So it's,
This is why they say 3, I cannot talk today. 3s, 6s, and 9s are really good for each other because
you balance out each other's weaknesses.
Yes, exactly. Because I feel like you and Jen have really taught me to rest more. Rachel was probably rolling her eyes on the inside because this was what the meltdown was about this morning where I was like, I'm not doing enough. And she was like,
follow the system and we'll see.
Yeah. Which is such a 6 thing. 6s are all about systems. But yeah, I feel like you've really taught me to listen to my body more, rest, give it what it needs. And if that's like food, like even like, remember like we'd be at parties and you just put a water bottle in my hand.
Yep.
Yeah. You're like, she needs water. And I'm like,
we were in the middle of that audition and you ordered the food on Uber Eats because neither of us were going to stop to do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm like, oh, we haven't eaten in like 7 hours.
And you know what? There's nothing $80 in Shanghai food can't solve.
Those soup dumplings, man.
Oh man.
Oh,
New York.
So good.
New York Uber Eats like far surpasses Uber Eats in Atlanta.
Oh, it's
like,
so
you want
good.
Chinese food? Okay, well, what kind?
A question that I like to ask all of our guests is, do you have a traumatic dance experience? And it's okay if you don't, but I'm just curious.
Like dance class, dance performance, moving your body. Like, he's like, no, because I live there. I'm so comfortable.
I'm really thinking about this. I don't know that I do, but also like I haven't had that many hours doing dance where like there's like room for like trauma. Does that make sense? Like I think
But
like
yes. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying the first thing I think about is like if I'm like in a class and I'm like I don't know how he's doing that with his hips. Like his hips and his shoulders doing different things. Oh, okay, we're doing the combo now. Okay, cool. Oh, you're picking me. Okay, great. Oh, I'm not gonna do it well. Oh, it's on video. Got it. You know what I'm saying? So that's there forever. And then of course, like I'm in the car,
That's
like
so accurate.
right. I'm like in the car, like trying to move my hips while I'm driving and like not wreck my car. And then I still haven't figured it out. So I don't go back and watch dance videos because of that. But.
Oh, sorry. I keep kicking him.
That's okay. My leg is like all the way over there.
I was going to say that's very your personality though. I always say you derp. Like you're just kind of like doop, doop, doop.
Yep.
I'm just derping through life, which again, envious. Because I feel like you're like this when you come out of auditions, when you come out of being on set, like when you come like out of situations where I usually am like, that went really well. And then I slowly unravel. So I'm like, well, I kind of like shook this person's hand weird. And then I said that.
Although
name kind
he
of in a high
had the
pitch.
same thought in a shower about like an embarrassing moment. So I'm
Okay,
like,
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
we all have it.
exist.
They
They
exist.
definitely exist.
But I feel like especially professionally, you don't seem to have like, you just kind of let things roll off your back or you don't even recognize.
I want to say it's the former where I just let it roll off, but I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I just didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about when I was like, yeah, why do you just keep being like pizza? And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Like,
I was just
everyone
randomly,
thinks this is weird, and you're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you just kept being like Domino's pizza, and I was like, what?
I will just randomly blurt things out. I don't know. Maybe that's my body being like, hey, you need food. I mean, you specifically want pizza. Or maybe I'm like thinking about some random funny thing that is only funny in context and there's no way to explain the context without going, well, when I was born. Anyway.
Hey, I know what it's like to have a really long setup that needs to be cut. Let me tell you.
Hello. Stand up. But yeah, I don't know that I have a really traumatic. Can you talk about some of yours? Have you already done that on a previous episode?
Yeah. Well, like if you're, a new student and you go in and like the teacher's just like not great, or you freeze before something, or like everyone has. But what's interesting about your story, from what I was listening to, is that I feel like you were doing drum corps and then you had this additional dance thing, but it wasn't like everyone expected you to be a dancer.
No.
So your introduction into it versus someone who maybe is like, oh, I'm going to try this at like 24 and like go, and everyone there is an already in dancer, or like even what I was saying about, okay, I'm going to be in a class with other professional dancers. I think it's kind of nice to be not expected, because even in like musical theater in high school, you're in, a dance comp, like you're doing the dance portion of the audition with kids who've been doing jazz since they were 9 and have all their leaps and everything looking great. So I think it's interesting the way that you went into it. It's just like, oh, I can do this, I can do this. And then you had a little bit of background before you did other styles, which is interesting.
Yeah. And even when I started doing dance in drum corps, like, so in drum corps, you essentially have people who like are athletes before and people who are not athletes before. And it's very, very evident in the way that they move, right? Nobody's fault. It is what it is. It's very evident in the way that they move. And I'll just never forget, we were doing Across the Floors, and I don't remember what the combination was, but like the guy who was doing it was, I didn't know that I was doing it really well. And then he like took everybody to like the sideline, and he was like, "You, black boy, come here." Which I'm like, yeah, now I think about it, this was 11 years ago. And he was this like really flamboyant gay guy from Miami, and just like, I don't know, there's so many things. I was like, oh wow, I'm being called out for something.
You're like, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
We literally don't.
This is why he has a shirt underneath this shirt.
Oh yeah. But he's like, yeah, go do the Across the Floors, and I was like, okay. So then I did it, and he was like, and then he used me as the example, and I was like, oh, I'm not bad at this. This is cool. I think it was like
I want more experiences in my life like this, where you're like called out, do something. I was like, oh, I'm the example.
This is very on par for
how Onye moves through life.
Yeah, he's like, whoops, I'm awesome.
Well, the thing was like, in comparison to everybody that was there, right? I was like good at it. If you put like a few professional dancers in there, it's like, I mean, in comparison to everybody that was there that wasn't in the color guard, right? Because in the guard, you have to be a good dancer. So that was my introduction. The introduction was like, hey, you're not bad at this. And I go, oh, great. I'm not bad at this. And then I go into a ballroom dancing class, which then leads to me going to the club, which, as you've mentioned, I'm like one of 2 people. And it's like, well, who are they going to compare me to? This other guy? This chemist? Absolutely not.
I have drum corps background.
Yeah. I'm going to go up and ask this girl
simultaneously taking
to dance.
ballet.
You know what I'm saying? So it was, and then like my legs hyperextend, like my knees hyperextend. And I honestly believe that is the reason why my legs can be as straight as they are whenever I'm like doing tendus or like whatever, because I'm like, oh yeah, I can hyperextend at the knee, which makes my line look way better.
Let's look at ballerinas.
Yeah, it looks just, so people are like, oh wow. And I'm like, yeah, I can get seriously injured this way, but for now, I'm going to use this when we're doing our jazz runs across, you know what I mean?
We're not looking throwback.
Yeah, seriously. Do people jazz run anymore?
I don't. The last time
I don't even know what that is.
Oh,
I know what a jazz walk is. Jazz run just sounds like a whole.
I kind of want to get up and show you, and you can just like narrate what I'm doing. Okay. And I just want you to know the last time I did a jazz run was when I auditioned for Avatar: The Blue People, because they wanted us. They brought us in a room that was probably like the size of like a New York bedroom. Like it was like a dance studio, but it was like, okay, I'm gonna say it was like 10 feet by maybe 12 feet. Okay. Wow. That's a big New York bedroom, but it's like 10 feet by 12 feet. And they were like, okay. And you didn't know what it was because this was like 2-3 years before it even came out. Jeez. And so they're like, yeah, we're going to bring you in like 3 at a time. We're going to have you go. All you knew was that it was a James Cameron project. And they're like, you're going to go in the corner and you're just going to jazz run. You're just going to run across. And you're like, and they're like, yeah, like you're like a different creature. And you're like, okay. So Rachel, this is what a jazz run is. Here, let me get up.
Okay, put those on the seat or else it'll buzz on the seat. Yeah.
She's getting up.
She's getting up.
She's laughing already.
She's already
You'll get it on the camera, maybe.
Okay, we'll get it.
You might get like a blur of here.
Oh my gosh. How do you even put that into words?
She looks like a gazelle with her hands up.
That was the thing. It's so crazy because
And there's like
Yeah. And the only reason
that was like a movement we needed in our vocabulary.
well, the reason why we needed that movement in our vocabulary was because in 2007, there was a drum corps called the Phantom Regiment. And the whole thing about Phantom Regiment was they did this show called On Air, and they played this really famous piece called the Firebird, whatever. So at the very end of it, the whole thing was like the measuring stick when you're doing marching band is what's called an 8-to-5 step. An 8-to-5 step is 8 steps per 5 yards. So every step is about 22.5 inches, right? So that is the measuring stick. Now you can do bigger steps. You can do what's called a 6-to-5, which is 6 steps for every 5 yards. But after that, it's becoming like not really practical to step that, because the 65 is 30 inches, and that's a long gait. So jazz running was introduced as a way to be able to move quicker through 5 yards. So in a jazz run, it was defined as 4 steps per 5 yards. So we had to learn how to jazz run because the Phantom Regiment in 2007 were jazz running and playing their horns. And like, I'm getting chills thinking about it because it truly is like, especially at the time, it truly was like a feat. There's like a video of them all on like a sideline, and they literally in a line all jazz run 100 yards playing their music. And it's the most
with breath. That's what's crazy.
Exactly. And it's the most incredible thing. Now everybody jazz runs, right? But that was the whole thing. It was like,
y'all what would you search to see that?
Phantom Regiment Horn Line 2007.
Wow.
Yeah. I've searched that. I've watched that.
Yes.
At least, no exaggeration, 200 times.
Wow.
Yeah. It's really crazy. Anyway, so we had to learn how to jazz run because they were like, y'all are going to have to move quickly and you have to do it with a version of grace. So jazz running is going to be the thing that'll help you do that without looking absolutely ridiculous. And it'll also help you. Yeah, exactly. Because
like flailing, like Phoebe Buffet running through Central Park with a drum.
And especially for like horn line members who they have to have like a specific like mouth placement or embouchure on their horns. And if it changes, their sound changes. So they have to be able to move really quickly with a jazz run, and everything from their waist up has to be absolutely still. And then same thing for the drummers. Like you can't have tension in your shoulders. You have to be able to like isolate, because if you don't, then your drum's just going to be bouncing on your body, and there's no way for you to play well with 12 other people if your drum is bouncing on your body. So you have to like learn these techniques for the sake of being able to like move, do it efficiently, and play your music and play it perfectly. And so like that's why jazz running even was like introduced to me. I don't know how we started talking about that, but yeah.
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 That was great.
You're like, yeah, dance and stuff.
So yeah. So it's better.
Yeah.
I feel like that with
Wait, sorry, real quick. I just want to give context and credit that we keep quoting John Mulaney.
Yeah, yes.
Because I don't want anyone to think that we are this funny. We just keep quoting John Mulaney from Kid Gorgeous and
New in Town.
New in Town. Yeah. Comeback Kid is great, but those are our two faves.
Although I will say, I will give credit to us because it takes talent to be able to reference them and still have it be funny.
Retelling a joke is a whole skill.
Yeah. It's one I don't normally have, but
wow. Yeah, says the stand-up. you really, yeah.
I've watched a lot of bad stand-up. I've heard the joke before. It was better the first time.
Well, it's funny. This is such a tangent, but it's like quoting SpongeBob is actually way funnier than like watching SpongeBob for some reason.
Yes, I agree. I feel that way about Zoolander.
Oh,
because the first time I saw it, I honestly didn't really like it, but I watched it so many times, and then I just kept quoting it, and I was like, "Oh, this is now it's a classic."
Yeah, wow.
I mean, that might be a hot take because I know that that's a beloved cinematic piece,
right?
But yeah, no, I agree that there are some shows that it's just funnier to quote.
Yeah.
John Mulaney's funny the first time though.
Yes, very much so.
Oh, what a comedic genius!
Oh gosh, the writing.
It's so good. I feel like half of our texts and conversations are just John Mulaney quotes.
Absolutely. Yep.
You've watched John Mulaney. Yeah. I made you watch it.
I'm your guys' friend.
Yeah. It's something that we make everyone watch.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I made you watch it, and then you spread the gospel. Anytime someone doesn't like John Mulaney stand-up, it's a red flag to me.
Yeah, because then I'm like, oh, you just don't understand comedy.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to call him out because he's your brother, but your brother.
Oh. You're like, we're not going to use names, but we're definitely going to use relationships.
Yeah. Well, I'm like,
and specificity.
I'm like, I know you only have one brother, but I'm not going to use his name. So your brother.
Yeah.
Which actually, Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's not funny, but it's actually hilarious. People get you and your brother mixed up all the time.
Yeah, no, he's taller than me. God.
You also look nothing alike.
We don't look anything.
It drives me
Related
crazy.
like cousins,
Yes.
but not like I would never mix you up.
Well,
I would never look into his eyes and be like, Onye.
Yeah, no. Well, people, because we worked at the same sushi restaurant, and then because he started working there before I did, and then when I got
the
there,
famed sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
which is not now closed.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. And when I got there, they're like, "Whoa, you remind me of OK," and I'm like, "What?"
Also, you're older.
I got
Like,
here
I'm
first.
personally
I've been in the
offended.
world, which like I don't know. Which it was, I don't know. Plus, it was anyway. That's a whole other thing. I don't even want to get into. But yeah.
Did your brother do any drum corps stuff or dance stuff? Or
No, my brother, he played trumpet in middle school to 8th grade, and then played basketball.
I can see that he's tall. Maybe that's, the blessing of.
Please.
I'm like, maybe that's the blessing of you not having the height is you ended up doing dance and drum corps and not basketball.
Are there not tall people who do dance and drum corps?
Well, you would have been occupied with basketball.
Oh, you're
Everyone would be
so
like,
right.
you
You're
got to
so
do
right.
basketball or like football or something because of
you're
your
very
height.
right. You're very right.
Like no one was telling Lucas to go play basketball. My husband.
You're like, and now we've been married.
Yeah. Well, I told him, I was like, we wouldn't be together if you had the height. Like that was like the thing that kept you in my league, which is below whatever league you would have been
LOL.
if you were taller.
Which is hilarious because Rachel Lamb is gorgeous. I'm not just saying this. You are very gorgeous. Like you are a head turner. Although it's funny because when you and I just put on, like if we put a little bit of effort into our appearance, we'll walk down the street and be like, we are gorgeous.
We're knockouts.
We are knockouts. Like we just like can't get over ourselves and how awesome we think we
because
are.
we look like this 97% of the time. The 3% we're like, wow, we glow up okay. But yeah, I think my husband is like very handsome. He's a great personality, and thank God he's short because I feel like if he was tall, we would not be together. He would be dating a model. I'd be like, you have the personality, the looks, and everything else, but there is like that little bit. God's like just a little shorter.
That's like us in our singing. God was like, you're too awesome.
Can't have it all.
Can't have it all.
Yeah, you can't. Don't sing. You can't do that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be fair.
You'd be unstoppable.
Yeah.
Only reserved for Ariana Grande.
I finally would have
and
been a
Taylor
Disney
Swift.
star. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh man.
I could have been Miley Cyrus.
Oh man, you would have been insufferable.
I know I would have. Absolutely. And I
You
also
get
would have
33 being like, why don't I have a bag line like and a perfume line to go with my 13 years of success, Grammys, Emmys, and Oscars
And SAG insurance.
and SAG insurance.
Oh, that's a real kicker.
I don't think those people ever think about the insurance they already have.
No. Well, when SAG changed their insurance policy and guidelines and whatever you want to call it, I was like, oh yeah, there's a reason we don't have like Brad Pitt in these meetings.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, Brad's not worried. He's also probably on like PGA insurance. He's not even on SAG insurance.
Right. And plus they take, like when you pay your dues, they take a certain amount of money up to $500,000. Those people, they make $500,000 working like 10 hours on a TV show.
We're like, why don't you take the rest? I thought this was the equal distribution we were looking at.
Yeah, no, it's just it's so.
Of course, you know that too. I didn't know that it was up to $500,000.
Wow, that feels like so dirty.
Yeah, so if you make $501,000, that whatever.
I'm just like, when you're poor, you're paying.
I was like 501,000. So is it 1,000 or $1? Yeah, that $1,000. They're not going to take whatever for it.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I would love to have that problem. Like,
Soon.
yeah.
of what making
So much money that it's like, well, now they have to stop taking SAG insurance money out of.
Oh yes, I'm like, is that even a problem? Although yes, then it's like
I would like the situation. I would love to be in the situation
great.
where it's
Yeah.
like, I made this much through acting, and like now I'm above the cutoff.
Do you feel like dance? I mean, we've already talked about how movement informs your acting. Do you feel like specifically dance has informed your acting?
Mm,
I know you've done some theater shows where
Yeah.
it's like they incorporate a dance, but I'm just curious.
Sometimes I wonder if it's the toe that's pointing without thinking about it.
Well,
Whoa,
so
that's good.
let me share.
Please.
I have like 10 years ago, I was in this acting class that was a cold reading class with a casting director, and the casting director had also been a dancer. And so we were doing scenes, and she was like, I need you to go back and do that line again without stepping back with the tendu and a pointed foot. And I was like, what? And she was like, yes, you just like danced your way through that scene. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Good to know. I've been laughing so much that now I have phlegm buildup.
Nice.
But
Super
yes,
cute.
I know it's very attractive. But that was something. And so I sometimes see too how my posture is affected, or it affects the way that I access characters. And not even because it, like, again, I don't access it through physicality the way that you do, but there is something about the awareness in my body, or even when we tape auditions and I feel like we choreograph them as well.
Which some people might call blocking.
Yeah. Not when you see this work we've done. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, you're going to push me into the wall. And I feel like I'm like just like doing this like modern contemporary dance thing into the wall.
I love a good throw yourself against the wall.
Me too. I'm like, is everyone going to be this committed? Yeah. Because
were you a hooker too?
And then you're like, God, that was so truthful. Why didn't they pick me?
yeah, this is okay. Honestly, this is like what I've always.
No, go ahead. I was going to answer your question. Please.
Oh, yes. Just a side note. This is what I feel like when you're like, yeah, I'm awesome. Why am I not booking more? I feel like that was the thing that I had for a long time. And still sometimes I'm like, I'm awesome. What's happening here? Like, I know everyone's always like, well, you got to like make sure you stay confident. I'm like, I'm confident. It's like, oh, you fuckers don't have it figured out.
Well, I will say that, like, to respond to that, when I watched an interview with Jonathan Majors, whom I love, and one of the things he said is like, yeah, when you're auditioning, you are shooting your version of the movie. So like, be prepared, shoot your version of the movie. And if they don't pick it, they're not shooting your version of the movie. And that's okay.
God, they're not even writing it.
He's like, as long as, like, especially, you know, in the world of self-taping, but even if you're going to an in-person, like, if you're prepared enough, you go in and you shoot your version of the movie, you have the ownership of what you did. And if they don't pick it, it's not because it was bad. It's because they're doing a different movie. And I'm like, that makes sense.
So this is why I feel like I'm like, it doesn't even matter to me to know who booked it or whatever, because I'm like, I'm not what they were looking for, especially because, so Onye and I are actually in a production company together. And so, and Rachel Lim and I were talking about this morning, is that being on the casting side of things, like as producers and writers, I feel like that's really given me some insight too, because I love all of the actors we've cast. It's never about the best read. It is about who fits that role. And it is something that is just, it's not tangible. It's something that is just lives in them. And so I think that's what has also helped me just release a little bit more instead of trying to figure out what I did wrong.
I will say at nurse number 2 though, like y'all.
But even then, because you and I, the three of us, have actually probably all gone in for the same role, which is ridiculous. But and something like that, and you're going to be a different nurse than I am than you are, right? Yeah, like we're all going to be different. Like Onye has like a purity to him. I'm like probably a little cunty, and you're coming in, you're like, hey, okay, I'm here, I'm a nurse. Like those are 3 very different nurses, and I think it depends. And you've sat in on casting sessions where you're like, oh, well, they'll sit and be like, well, this person did a really good job, and they're clearly very talented, but this person serves the story.
Yeah.
And it's like they're in like
and
2
they're
scenes.
kind of that person in real life, and it just is.
Yes.
They don't even need to be good.
Yes. No, absolutely. And it's like, well, this person comes off as nicer, and this person comes off as a little ruder. And so what we need for this character though is to someone that they can trust. So we're going to go with a nice person. Like those are things. And it sucks to hear as a younger actor, because I'm like, well, God damn, if you told me to be nicer, I could just be nicer in the audition. But at the same time, my essence is never going to match up with that person who came in like Rachel Lamb and naturally was like a little bubbly and a little nicer.
Yeah, I think we all truly believe that you book work mostly because of all the things that you can't control that permeate your existence.
Which is so funny, because it's like, oh, I'm going to do the arts because I can control this. I'm self-managed. And it's like
self-managed.
So many things are just out of your control.
Yeah. But I think the thing that is in your control for the most part is how easily you're able to access whatever your version of truth is. And I think because, for me, it is like a physical thing. Like to answer your question about if I love the story that you gave, because I think I do realize that there are times where I'm like, okay, let go. Like let go. Like this thing that I have, learned as far as like body posture or like the way that just like I generally move through space, I can go, great, because I have an awareness of this, I can do whatever the opposite of that is, or I can do a tangent of whatever that is and go, this person is also valid. So I think it probably will inform my acting in the sense of what it is that I naturally do and go having an awareness of that and going, great, what is different and how is that more appropriate? How is that a more appropriate choice for whatever character it is? Because there have been moments where I'm like, oh yeah, like disengage your core. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this person is a little sloppy, or like I just got an audition that I didn't end up doing for so many reasons, but it was like, we need you to sleep in 5 different ways.
I love this so much.
They're like, you just need to see like 4 or 5 different takes of you sleeping.
Not blocking. Needing to choreograph.
In the instructions, it was like, yeah, so if you could like frame it like on a couch or maybe like on a chair. And in my head, I'm like, this is not real. And they're like, yeah, so like you're sleeping and let's say maybe you're snoring. And then maybe another take, you like the camera crew comes in and you like shoo them away. Or maybe another take, like they come in and then you like look up and you're like, oh, what's going on? And then maybe another take, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? And then maybe another take, you just have fun with it. And I'm like, you want me to show you sleeping in 5 ways? But for like the 10.5 seconds that I literally thought, okay, maybe I'm going to do this, I was like, okay, when I sleep, I'm not engaging my core. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not snoring like a dancer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whatever that means. I'm like, okay, great. What is the version of myself that is not conscious? Literally, because that's the audition.
I actually have a photo of Mallory last night. It's not of Mallory. It's actually of my cat sleeping on her pointed toes. So,
so funny. Yeah. So yeah,
sleeping on her pointed toes while Mallory was sleeping.
That could have been your audition.
Yeah, honestly.
But that makes sense because I feel like dance gives you a body awareness. And so it feels like in Rachel M, you and I had talked about this a lot because you're like, oh, that's how I move just a single shoulder. Oh, that's what my shoulder feels like.
Like 3 years in, I was like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but your neck and your shoulders are 2 different parts of your body.
Whoa.
Because like, especially in like yoga and they would like, you'd roll your shoulders back. I had so much neck tension because I like thought it was the same. And then one day I was doing dance and doing isolations and I'm like, oh, I can move my shoulders without like moving my neck. And same thing with my chest. Like my shoulders and my chest were always like so connected until I could like separate them.
Hey.
That's interesting. There are things that I've learned through movement classes that have like made me understand dance concepts better that maybe I'll use in my auditions, right? Like, cause like I remember for the longest, especially in drum corps, the easiest way to get somebody to move, quote unquote, move in slow motion is like pretend you're moving through water. And it's like, okay, well, that works for some people, but like not for others. But then like I take a viewpoints class and you're talking about tempo and it's like, yeah, the tempo here is 1. Like maybe
of course a drum corps person would love the tempo.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite viewpoints. It's like the tempo is 1, like your mental tempo is 10, but like your body tempo is 1. So how are those 2 things living truthfully inside your body? You can only move as much as your body is allowing you to, even though your head is like, so like I will use that and go, oh great. Whenever we're doing a thing where it's like a
sleeping, by the way.
Or like if I'm in like a dance class and they're like, okay, now we're gonna move and then we're gonna do this. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. My tempo here is 1, even though 10, I'm thinking there was, and then boom. You know what I mean? Like I will use that in dance. And then like when it comes to like taping auditions, like you helped me with an audition, which actually I didn't book the part, but I ended up booking that same project. Where one of your notes was like, you're going to slowly approach this person and make them feel uncomfortable as much as you can. Like while you're saying the words, like the space between you and the person and technically between you and the camera is going to get slower over the course of the entire audition. And it was like a 1.5 minute scene or something like that. So in my head, I'm like, great. I'm doing all these things. My head is at a tempo like whatever, but my body is at a tempo like 0.5. So I'm going to start the scene here. And then by the time the scene is over, like my face will be taking up a significant amount of the screen. And it's like, had I not taken this movement class that informed my dancing, I don't know that I'd be able to like apply that to my acting right now.
It makes you like a fuller artist, I think.
Completely.
The way that you're describing it, because we had a conversation, because I'm about to get into watercolors. Hello, 7 Wings. She like wants to just do new things. But I was like, it's not even about doing like the visual art. I feel like I need to get something like my brain off of one thing to like do the other thing, but you start thinking of things differently when you're like also taking into consideration movement and breathing and tempo. And then you have the audition, you're going to approach that completely differently, or even like as yourself without all of those things. So like if you don't have, you know, if you were like Onye, but without the movement and X, Y, and Z, like that would still be a completely different audition. And I think it just gives you like more tools to work with when you're like, this is the kind of artistry that I want to do on this piece.
Completely. Because it may not work for like sleeping guy, but if you're crafting a character that's supposed to like carry a TV show or carry a movie, like, oh my God, Willem Dafoe, y'all, I just watched the new Spider-Man. Willem Dafoe is, I'm getting chills. It was incredible. Like he is ridiculous. He's ridiculous. And the cool thing about like learning about movement stuff and learning about dance and like learning about like all these things is like now you're recognizing people do that. So like when you're crafting a 3-dimensional character that has to like live an entire life over the course of however long, that's when you really need those tools. Like you may not necessarily need them for Nurse 2 or Sleeping Guy 6 or whatever it is.
Or that like LA class that's like, you're enough.
Sure. Yeah. But it's like, oh yeah, this is part of my tool belt. And having that to access, like I understand why people go to school for acting. Like I didn't go to school, like I don't have like an MFA or anything like that, but like I understand because like, yeah, I just have all of these tools and maybe one day I'll get the opportunity to use all of them.
And back in the day, like when studios used to have actors contracted to the studios, I mean, like there's old photos of James Dean in a ballet class. Like everybody was in a dance class. Everybody was doing voice lessons. Like that was just how performers would have all of the things.
Yeah. I just, oh my gosh. I was listening to another podcast because that's all I do, of Daniel Kaluuya, and he just did Judas and the Black Messiah. He's playing Fred Hampton. And he's doing all these ridiculous speeches that take a lot. And he's like, the reality is when you're doing a speech in real life, it's only like maybe 30 minutes, maybe 2 hours. But when you're doing days and days and days of this, 12-hour days, like I had to study opera and like learn how to strengthen my vocal cords through opera in order for me to like survive shooting this. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like the fact that opera is helping you access Chairman Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party, and you know what I'm saying? Like
it's because you need to, the way that you have to condition to do drum corps, condition to do any athleticism, like you have to condition to be able to do your work properly.
Yeah.
And you're using your voice and you're using your movement. And so it naturally makes sense that you would have to strengthen, you know, your breathing and all the skills that you get from opera, because they're also singers who use a lot of air and then are also moving around a stage for several nights over and over again.
Yeah. You keep almost saying something, Mallory.
No, I'm actually just processing everything that y'all are saying. This feels similar, tangential to what we talked about with our last guest, where we talked about, specifically, she was saying with dance, how it can allow, it does like processing for your body and it becomes applicable to other things. Sometimes just not even when we're conscious of it.
Yeah.
Like it can really like open channels. And so I'm just thinking, because again, the thing that came up also with her was like, I feel a lot of guilt when something isn't working towards something. Like the way that I always said that it was okay to take dance classes was because I'm a professional dancer. I'm a professional, so I'm allowed to do this. I'm allowed to do this and allowed to pay and put my resources towards this because it's helping my career. And it's been harder, both of you know this, to be like, for this to be like your watercolor. Yeah, for this to be my watercoloring.
Like the thing that you're doing on the side to open up the rest of your life and brain.
Like
but it's
as a writer, as an actor, whatever. And so it's interesting to hear you two talk about it and be like, yes, this is making me a better artist. Like you studying opera, Rachel Lynn, feels like some bullshit you're going to do next year. Like it feels like.
I feel attacked, but also so sad.
Like I could absolutely see you one day being like, actually, I'm going to take opera lessons for the next 6 months. Like I'm going to go 3 times a week and I'm going to know all the ins and outs.
I did actually take voice lessons with a classical teacher who also does opera.
Yes. Like, and I feel like as a 3,
we probably had the same teacher. It's Atlanta. It's very small.
I feel like as a 3, it's really interesting to see how that leads to growth even in your career. But you and I, Onye, talk about this a lot where you can't, I mean, you can, but it's like, don't do the thing
for the result.
For the result.
Yeah.
Which again, a call back to our last episode. But so I think I'm connecting a lot of things right now because really at the end of the day, today specifically, I'm trying to give myself permission to do things for fun and not just because I'm working towards being more productive so that I can achieve something, which is such a 3 issue, but I really struggle with it.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that the issue is that you are having this like, I want to have fun. Oh, I was gonna help though.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take this dance class, but maybe I'll audition for the Blue People Avatar again. You know what I mean?
I'm going to take this dance class, but also she picks 5 people at the end and I want to be one of the best.
Right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, I'm going to go to this museum. Oh my God, but it's the Black Panther Museum. Do you think they'll be there? Oh my gosh. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's, yeah. But I think the thing I keep hearing, and I don't know that it's happened to me yet, and I'm hopeful that it will. The thing I keep hearing from people who have been able to like apply things from their life into their work is that it's never the thing that you think it'll be.
Yeah.
Like, it's never going
That's like
to
sounds so woo-woo, but also like so accurate.
Yeah. Like it literally will never be the thing that like it'll be that. Who was, it was Daniel Kaluuya, but he was talking about how he was like, yeah, I just like really loved this movie, Kings of New York with Christopher Walken. And then like when he did Widows, he was like, yeah, they were like, just make him uncomfortable. And I was like, oh yeah, this reminds me of that time that I saw that one movie. Maybe I'm going to try that. But he wasn't watching the movie to try it in a movie later on. He was just like, maybe I'll try it. And then he had like 13 words in the whole movie, but that's the only thing I can remember. Like that scene where he's like making this person uncomfortable. And he's like, yeah, my inspiration was this thing that I experienced like years before.
We've talked about this a lot, especially in the last 2 years, because we like did the film festival circuit and we were like talking to people and like pitching and all this stuff. And people would be like, how are you different from these other 6 shows? Or they wouldn't even reference shows. Sometimes they would be like, how are you different than the market? And because I was practicing rest and had binged everything and anything that like was even not for the sake of being prepared for this thing that was like a year or 2 later,
sure,
but because I was just trying to let myself relax and enjoy television, I was able to be like, yes, this is how we're different from those. This is how we're similar. Here's how our market would be different. Here's the demographics we'd be targeting that are overlapping, but are also different. And that was because I had relaxed and watched TV like a human.
Yeah.
And those are that really, and it also informed my writing. I know these things logically.
That's the
but
problem.
Then you
know them logically.
Yes. But to like let them sink into my body is really, it's a different story. And I think that it's pretty cyclical for me. So I'll have periods where I'm really good at resting, but I feel like it's just been hard for me to rest this year. And rest, meaning letting my brain and my body, or at least like my brain, relax and do something for the sake of it being joyful or restful, whether it's like napping or sitting on the couch watching TV or reading a book. Like everything feels like it has to be a means to an end, and I don't like it. So that's what's going through my head as y'all are going back and forth about like watercolors and opera. I'm like, oh God, shit.
Yeah.
I feel like I stumbled into dance kind of in the same way because I was really insecure about my movement skills. And having started acting in LA, everything you focus on is like on camera, being still. And I get it from like a don't indicate and kind of way. But I feel like I ended up feeling a little bit like stuck in everything I was doing. And then I felt like I was like always crushing impulses. Like now that I have like a movement vocabulary and I'm very comfortable with movement compared to where I started, I felt like everything I was doing was actually like crushing impulses all over the place because I was trying to achieve something that I thought that I was supposed to do. And then I ended up doing more of the movement, and it completely changes. And similarly, when you like approach a piece, I'm like, it completely changes the way that I see characters or watch people on the screen and all that kind of stuff. And then I forgot my train of thought like right about now.
We were talking about dance and how you, no, I forgot it too.
Well,
yeah.
I was saying, I'm
just reiterating some of the same stuff.
Because I was saying that I feel like allowing myself to do things.
And now I truly enjoy it. So I started it with a purpose, and I was like, I don't think I would have gone through it if I didn't know it was going to be like, I knew it was going to be miserable because I knew I was bad at it. Like I knew that I didn't start with I think the closest thing that I had was like cheerleading, which is not real dance. Like in high school, I did 1 year of, and then I did baton, but I never had like the dance background. So I could do all the baton stuff, but not like the beautiful leaps and like good lines and stuff that come along with it. So I'm like, that's where I started. So I was like, even worse. I'm like 9 years of piano lessons that led to nothing. Like I have I can't count. Like I can't do all of those things. So then like going into to dance because you're like, oh, I'm going to accomplish a thing. But then now I'm doing it because I'm like, it makes me feel whole and joyful. And there's like not a purpose to being accomplished anymore. But I know it's like also like a watercolor thing to just get your mind off it. It is interesting to like take something and then like find the joy in something that you tried to put purpose to originally.
Yeah, it's tricky. Do you feel like, have you had that experience where you have started something because you were like, this will help
Like a
achieve
self-improvement.
goal? Yeah, like a self-improvement thing. And then I guess 2 questions. One, and then you ended up actually falling in love with it because it was joyful. And then 2, have you abandoned ship and been like, I was doing this for reasons that, I don't want to say the wrong reasons, but like reasons that aren't serving me.
The first thing that comes up is my fitness journey. I ran a lot earlier this year. Like I did the Nike Run Club, but before that I did like Couch to 5K, and like it ended in May with like me running 35 minutes and like 4.5 miles straight without stopping. And I was like, I've never done that before. And I haven't done it since. But like the whole thing was that like I wanted to, this is the most unhealthy thing, but like, when you go on set and you see people who are all skinny, who
Also the fitting people sometimes.
yeah, oh God.
Hit or miss.
Yeah.
I have so many stories about that.
Yeah, I've like had some great fitting people, and I've
had
had some that I'm like, I can't believe you say this to a human being. And I'm like, and they were saying that to me when I was like a size 2. But like, of course, everyone from LA is like even smaller than that. Like it was just so, I was like, okay, well.
Yeah, and like that's not to say that those bodies don't exist, but it's like there are other bodies that exist that are, that have stories to tell. Anyway, so like I started running mostly for my health, but I always had that little thing in the back of my head. It's like, well, if I run, I'm going to be able to fit into 34 waist jeans, and that's great because then that means that, you know what I'm saying? And so like I ran and I did eventually fall in love with it for sure. And ironically, around the time that I was running, then I was receiving auditions for these people who are like, I had an audition for a guy who was literally like a physical specimen. And I was like, oh, that's hilarious. I like
Also that character description.
Yeah, we can break that down forever. But like I had essentially let go of the idea that like I was doing any of the health stuff for my career. And then I started getting opportunities that were like, yeah, this person is like healthier, like whatever. So like I did. And then I stopped, and then I like transitioned, and I ran a little bit more, and I kept running, and then like it got cold. So I was like, I'm going to transition into going to the gym. And then that became a whole thing. So like I'm currently in the transition of like, remember you're doing this because you want to be here for a long time. You're not doing this because you want to like fit in a certain thing, in certain clothes so that you look a specific way on camera, because that doesn't exist. But then that's the whole control thing, right? It's like, yeah, I can control what I look like. And anyway, so to answer your question, I feel like I do.
I appreciate your tangents, by the way. I know I make fun of you for your origin stories, but I do actually really appreciate everything that you're sharing.
And they're very applicable.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel like you need to wrap them up every time. Because also we don't have a time limit here.
And you're the star of the show.
Yeah, you're the star of the show. Oh. It's different when there are like 6 of us and they have an hour, and then we have like a 30-minute origin story, which like it's still a great story because people ask you to tell it still. So for the record though,
thank you.
I know I give you a lot of shit. But okay, also just quick side note, because I feel like I've given you a lot of shit on this podcast, and I'm like, the 2 of you, Rachel, Lam, and Onye, sit and roast me constantly. Like that
always.
is
one of our favorite pastimes.
That is like their favorite thing to do. So it's not just one-sided. But
we're just gonna you were out here having conversations with the Uber guy.
Oh.
Literally on your deathbed, you cannot stand up, and then you get into the cab and you're like, hey man, how's it going? You having a good night? Oh man, thrifting in Brooklyn is great. Yeah, I'm going to the emergency room. Thanks. But yeah, that's like ridiculous. Anyways,
but yes, please carry on.
For sure. Thank you for saying that.
Yes. Because you are a wonderful storyteller.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Hey, Maddie.
Oh, but yeah. I mean that I will say that is something that I think I've done, and like ironically, there are things that I've done because I loved them, and then I was like, I should continue doing this because it will help my work, and then I stopped doing them.
Oh.
Yeah. I stopped.
Classical voice lessons.
It's and like I started taking voice lessons, and truthfully, I only stopped because I like financially, I just can't.
They're so expensive. It's like $80 a session.
Yeah.
For like a half hour. I don't even know. It's so expensive.
But like there was a point where like during quarantine, like I bought a piano and I loved it and I played it all the time. And then I was like, I really feel like I need to learn more piano things because like I taught myself how to play. Like I understand some music theory, but there's definitely a lot that I can still learn. I need to learn because what if I get called to do a piano thing? Like I think I had just seen Green Book. I was thinking about Green Book and I was like, yeah, I know that Mahershala wasn't playing, but like how amazing would it be to be able to play and like do these things, right? Or like Ryan Gosling in La La Land. I'm like, I know he was playing in some of those things. I want to be able to do that. And you know what? My piano's gathering dust now. Like I started and then I was like, no, so it's interesting that like the opposite thing has happened.
Like as soon as it's tied to productivity or your career, then suddenly
I'm like,
kind of goes out.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, I'm wondering if it's because, there's like a steep climb, because I also really enjoy playing the guitar. I'm not good at it. I have like a handful of songs I can do, but then I'm like, I'm not ever going to be like a guitar player. And like, if they need a guitar player, there's someone who's a legitimate guitar player.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, instead of just doing it because I like playing the songs, I like singing, I like doing it, it's become, okay, well, there's no point in doing it.
Yeah. And
it's not productive or whatever.
The thing that worries me, right? And I won't say worry, but it's something that I'm like very aware of, is that like when any of us at this table are asked to prepare for a role where you have to like have a skill, it's like, yeah, I'm getting paid to learn this skill. But because it's tied to productivity, will I enjoy the process of learning the skill, or am I just literally doing this for a job? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know that like anybody who's learned something for the sake of a movie is like, yeah, and now I've fallen in love with it. Unless you're like Bradley Cooper for some reason, because I feel like he like learned something and is like, great, now I can sing.
He's got 7 vibes to me.
He's
like
something.
just out there like
I could see that.
He's
eating
like,
up the world.
Now I know, like Dex Shepard is always like, yeah, if I ever like was outside and I saw like an F-16 flying above me and somebody was like, that's Bradley Cooper, I'd be like, yes, of course it is. That's like who he is. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. So I have like an awareness of like, at the end of the day, it's that cliche thing of like, trust whatever the process is, regardless of what the outcome is. Trust the process of doing it, because you have to fall in love with the process of going to the gym when you hate it, whether it's because you're trying to get in shape for a part or whether you're trying to like have fitness for your life, or you have to like trust the process of like learning the thing that you don't really understand immediately, whether it's because you later on will be able to like apply it to something else when you're just playing for pleasure, or if it is again because of a part or like whatever else. So I don't know. It's, yeah, trust the process. I guess at the end of the day is like the thing that I'm like, just show up. Just show up. Whatever that means, show up. Go to the gym, sit down at the piano. I am really bad at sitting down at the computer and like writing. That's something I haven't done yet still, or in a while.
Have you done, we just had a conversation about this earlier, morning pages before?
I have not, no.
Interesting. No, go.
So there's a popular book for our listeners who haven't heard of it called The Artist Way. And I was introduced to it by a songwriter actually. And a lot of different people, even business people like read it. It's a very like, how to be an artist manual with exercises type of thing. I've actually not done the whole book. I just like did like the first 4 chapters and then like whatever. But one of the things that she talks about is something called morning pages, where you like brain dump for 3 pages and you literally just do like a train of thought. You're not like thinking. For me, mine always end up being lists, and then it'll be like back and forth between lists and being mad at my husband or something, and then I get it out. But it frees up your brain to be able to write, and then once it just gets you like not stuck on looking at a blank page. And so like you do it, and then normally like your brain just starts naturally thinking of all, like naturally being able to like write or do something creative after that.
So it's literally just writing anything?
Yeah. And then you like throw it away. Like you shred it. Like you're doing your train, like a stream of consciousness. So like everything going through your brain, you just like write it down or type it out, and you do it for, I think 3 pages or 20 minutes.
Oh, it's a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Thing.
So exactly. So it doesn't even make sense. You don't even edit it. You're just like, okay, I was going to and I'm so mad at him about the shower yesterday, and then I need to go pick up my dry cleaning. Like sometimes it just like looks like that. It's interesting because I'm like, it works it like really gets you out of writer's block.
It's actually incredible. When I'm in like my self-care mode,
yeah.
I do it every morning.
Whoa.
And then you shred the pages after. Like it's just,
I don't shred them. I mentally shred them, but
Really?
I keep all of them because sometimes I'll go back and look at them just out of curiosity.
Like, what in the world is hurting?
my first 3 days were always like to-do lists, and then it stopped being that. And I'm like, how interesting that my to-do lists get in the way of like me being able to start doing something
This
else.
is so fascinating because mine are never to-do lists. That's why I'm like, of course yours are to-do lists. Mine were like all these like pent-up emotions or
I was just
anger.
gonna say it's probably all those things that you're stewing over on whether or not it like how it affected someone else. I'm like, so mine is like my systems are in the way, and then yours are like you know, interactions with other people.
I'd be curious what yours
Mine
are.
would be like, well, my back hurts. And,
Need more sleep.
Yeah, and I'm sleepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be also. It's so funny because I've heard of something like that, but it was the end result was like, if you want to be a better writer, and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do a thing to be better at a thing. I want to like love writing so that I write.
It's interesting because it was like, you know, CEOs will do this, or she's like, you know, like this famous person does this. Like all these people who are not necessarily like trying to be writers do morning pages.
Okay, but did they start doing that after they became CEOs or before?
I think after. Like they weren't doing it to become,
The only person that I know, I say this, I'm like, oh yeah, because you can wake up and do morning pages, right? You don't wake up and have to do other things.
Yeah.
The only person that I know for a fact has done something like that before they gained any sort of like success is Matthew McConaughey. And the reason why I just listened to his book, and his book is essentially just like a bunch of stuff that he's written over the course of his life, like journals and like stories and like whatever else. And like he like puts it together in a comprehensive way. But I'm like, oh yeah, here's a guy who like wasn't doing it for the sake of like being better at something. It's just like, yeah, this is just what it is. And now he's Matthew McConaughey. There's an ocean of things that happened between him doing quote unquote morning pages.
Everyone's always like, you have just as many hours in the day as Beyonce. I'm like, yeah, but not all of her personal assistants.
Yeah.
Like,
like, do you actually have them? No, you don't, right?
Also the resources.
Exactly.
Like, y'all, let's not even.
Resources, access, like we can say all those things, yes. And like theoretically, yes. At some point, it's going to take a toll because you can only go to sleep at 12 and wake up at 5 so many times. Says the 9. Who loves sleeping.
Yeah, before you end up in the urgent care 3 times and the ER twice.
LOL. Yeah.
I was like, I know when you're like 12 to 5 so many times, I was like, I mean, that feels like a reasonable schedule.
Yeah.
You looked right at me when you said it, dude.
Well, until 5 o'clock. And you know, the reason.
And we have nothing to show for it.
I love that you said it's a stream of consciousness thing. And it's essentially like training yourself to like let go. I was reading something about how there's like specific adrenaline that I'm going to butcher this, but like when you wake up and do something immediately, like you're training your body to be prepared to do that same thing. So if you wake up and like scroll social media immediately, like the amount of adrenaline that you need to do that is the amount of adrenaline that'll be released when you wake up. But if you wake up for like 5 days and just like immediately hit the floor and do like 30 push-ups, then your body's like, great, I guess we're doing 30 push-ups when we wake up every single day. And your body like learns that, and I want to be like, oh yeah, I want to try that, but I just want you to know that
have you ever woken up?
Yeah, I just know that I've woken up and I'm like, I should do 30 and immediately fall back asleep. It's just like not, you know, I don't know. So maybe morning
motivational
pages.
people are just like full of shit. I'm like, most of the people who are like always about the motivational quotes or motivational anything are like the least motivational. Like sometimes those people who write those self-help books are like on cocaine for 72 hours. Yeah. wrote a self-help book, bestseller, and now they're making millions and chilling out till they do another pent up cocaine. Like,
yeah, shout out to those of you who might be listening at this table, who have written self-help books.
All 4 of our listeners.
You know, like no shade. But also, I don't know. I have personally never seen it work. That's not to say that it doesn't exist.
Work.
Like people who are like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to wake up at such and such. Like I know people who post about it. But also, like,
are they motivational though to you? Like their life itself. Like if they didn't say the motivational things, would you be like, wow, I would follow the advice?
I don't think I would know anything about their lives if they didn't say anything.
Also, I feel like that's like a thing though. Like this is what I'm like, this is where I'm like, the motivational people are like not people that I'm ever motivated by.
Yeah.
But even when you say that, I'm like, do you even know anything about those people's lives, or do you only know what they're telling us?
Exactly. You know the people who I am motivated by? Because I would run in Astoria Park, and like you go however many times a week, and then you start seeing the same people. And you're like, oh, what's up, guy? I don't know your name. You always wear your pants up to your belly button, like sometimes touching your nipples. But like the first time we like made eye contact, the second time we were like, hey. And the third time he was like, yeah, it's a warm one today. And I'm like, are we friends? I think we're friends. And I think it's literally because like we show up here.
Anya's never ending journey to friendships.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It's all about just making friends.
Yeah, I felt that way too, because they would have classes there too, and you see the same people in those classes, like the same people with the same personal trainer, or the same people in like the dance class, and I'm like,
which like,
look at you, girl.
Yeah, maybe they are posting about it. Good for them. So maybe those people do exist, but for me, it is that feeling of like, oh, we're the late night gym crew. That's pretty cool. I like that. Like, I feel like I have a kinship with y'all. I don't know what you just went through, but hey, you hit that set earlier. Congratulations. That's a PR, isn't it? And like, you're not saying these things to the people, but you're watching them because they're motivating you.
That's how, when I was in LA and I'd hike with Maddie every morning in Highland Park, and like, you see, especially morning crew is different than a night crew. Like morning crew, different personalities, different, like everything is different vibe. And so we would see the same people, and we became, because I did that hike for a year and a half, and you know those people by the end of it. Like one woman was like, "Oh, let me send you home with a scarf." Like at the top of the hill, she was like, "Oh, let me send you home with this," and I was like, "Thank you so much." I knew about her kids, her family.
Right.
So interesting, because I'm like, it's not even like a stab at the motivational people that I'm not motivated by, but I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh, this person, like, just what, like the reason why you go through IMDb and we're like, how did you get into your pipeline? Like, the people that I'm most motivated by, I'm like, they don't have the time to be motivational for other people, and I'm like, and I'm just wondering what they're doing, you know what I mean? Or like the thing that gets them going in the morning, etc., if at all.
I think it's just the mental energy that you would use to like put it out there on social media is probably the mental energy that they use to just do it. That's not to say that those two things can't exist, right?
At the same time, yeah.
Right? I'm always like, hey, people, self-help people who are listening, it's okay. Like, I'm not attacking you.
Oh, no, I think it's wonderful that you can do that. But I'm also saying, like, I also think that I'm like, it's not necessarily, when you know that background, you take the advice a little bit differently, because you're like, that might not be the thing that worked for them, because this other, because I have looked at, there are a lot of people, I think what happened was I was like watching YouTube, and somehow because of the author stuff, I ended up reading a bunch of books. People who are like, this is how you write and self-publish your own book. And it's all these people who almost describe that. Like, they spent one weekend on a lot of caffeine or Adderall or whatever, and they wrote a self-help book and they sold it, and then now they have passive income or something. And I'm like, this is what, so when people talk about like, oh, I'm like reading a lot of self-help books, I just see it differently because of all the different authors who've like described what they were doing when they wrote one.
Like there's added context.
There's added context
instead of just taking it at complete face value.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's not necessarily they're doing anything different than me. They just did for like a couple weekends, and then like, you know. And so, and I also feel like some of the self-help books that I have read that are popular bestsellers, it's like you read the back of the book and then you're like 120 pages into it, and it's just you feel like this book is going to show you this book is, and you're still like 120 pages in. I'm like, did you expect anyone to like read all the way through the thing? Because like this thing, and then you finish it and you're like, yeah, the concept that I read on the back of the book that told me like the book is going to be about like a 4-hour work week. I'm like, the back of the book summarizes the entire thing.
Yeah.
And like, and they a lot of self-help book writers expect, they're like, no one's really going to read past page 80. Like there's like, because like there's like a certain number of books that don't get finished, and they have these statistics now because of Kindle and like, or like, you know, audiobooks and like online books. And I was like, that was kind of eye-opening for me, because I did read some of those self-help books, like the business ones, especially that they have you even read in college. And then I'm like, I don't know if this is necessarily what they're doing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And as far as social media and posting, I just want to make it clear, both of you know this, I did the social media game, as did Rachel Lamb. And so when I say that, that's why I'm like, listen, I know that some people really love social media too. They use it as a way of connecting with people. They use it as a way of keeping up with friends and family. It does not make me feel like my best, healthiest self. And I was wasting so much time and energy every day posting, and then like coming up with the caption, and then like which
fake
emoji.
Engaging with people.
Yeah. And I feel like I felt so much more freedom when I got off of it, but I was also like, oh, I have all this time available to me now. Like now I can just go do the thing I want to do, instead of showing people, especially as a 3, that is showing people what I'm doing.
It's so funny because this year I quit social media in January. I permanently deleted my Facebook and my Twitter. And then I have an Instagram that exists, but I only like log on it once a month, just in case, like mostly to like schedule my hair appointment, because like there's a couple things that like like people only schedule through Instagram these days. And so I'm like hair slashes, like there's certain businesses that I use through social media or whatever, but it's not on my phone as like the app. I deleted it in January. The first time that I ever deleted social media, I did the entire Spanish program through Duolingo in 30 days because instead of like scrolling, I would just like, you drift to an app because it's not there anymore. And like I drifted towards the language learning app, and then I deleted after I deleted everything else and then Instagram off my phone at the beginning of the year. I've read 60 books since May.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and some of the books are like 800 pages long. Like that's because, and instead of like sitting and scrolling on my phone, I just bring a book with me everywhere.
Yeah.
And like I remember I had it in a car, and one of my friends who's really into social media was like, okay, we should have like a conversation, because I think she was like thinking it was like antisocial to have a book, and I'm like, no, I always had this because instead of scrolling on my phone, this is my version of being on my phone. So it was like she saw it so different. I'm like, this is how people look at you when you're glued to your phone in a car.
It's also to me the same way, because I think sometimes I use my phone or have used my phone in social settings to get a sort of break from interacting with people socially. And so when I have a book, I'm able to, I'm not going to pull it out in the middle of a dinner party, but it does give me something in public spaces to just kind of like disconnect from people for a second. Like it's offering the same thing in a sense. It's like a break or reprieve from interacting with people socially.
And alternatively, I also feel like when we go out together, we meet a lot of people and have a ton of conversations because our faces are out of our phones and like, or not in them at all. And some people have even commented on that. Like one person we met was like guessing our age because we weren't in our phones.
Oh, wow.
And it was noticeable. Like it was noticeable that we were like there and like up and present to like talk to other people.
Well, because he said it's because we didn't have him on the actual bar too. He's like, you don't have your phones out at all. It feels free to me.
People notice it. I will say, living in New York and being on the subway where you don't have access to internet, I like have gotten really into audiobooks and Sudoku. And it's like cool because I'm like, I'm on my phone, but I'm not. I'm like playing a puzzle. I'm like exercising my brain.
I feel like Sudoku's up there with the watercoloring. Like it's Sudoku in my mind, I've always felt like is a waste of time. Like the way that you feel about like doing so many things but with no purpose. I've always struggled with like like I know people love like, crossword puzzles and Sudoku and stuff. And that's one that I don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything. And I'm like, I know I can, but it's weird because I like understand how you feel about not doing certain activities because it's like pointless. And I'm like, that's one where I'm like, at least I guess watercolor is a skill. I'm like jump ropes. So certain things are a skill. So maybe like in my mind, I'm still like skill building.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
That makes sense. Do you like problem solving?
No, absolutely not. Lucas, my husband though, is excellent. Like he should be like a coder because he just solves problems.
I love problem solving.
I know.
I think that's part of the reason that I like puzzle games. I'm like, oh, this is the best.
Oh yeah. You do always have a new app every few months that's like some sort of puzzle solving.
Yeah. I love.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
I would much rather problem solve than learn a skill.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Absolutely not the case for me.
And also crazy, we need you in the world. Like,
yes,
you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's why you'll be an incredible director. If and when you choose to do that, you will be an incredible director because so much of it is problem solving. And because you've worked crew on things too, and you're fucking quick, first of all, and second of all, like you're a problem solver, which I appreciate. And I also appreciate that just like in general, when I'm having issues, I typically will call or text you, like I don't understand.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's like, and this is part of the reason I'm like, will I ever be a writer? Because to me, I'd much rather go, oh, I see what this needs. It's this versus, oh, let me just create the thing. You know what I mean? Like I am so, this goes back to like indoor drumline. I'm so much better at cleaning choreography than I am at writing it. Like give me something to clean and I got you.
I feel
I will
like
figure it out.
I've been and am in the same journey where I've always been like, oh, in improv, like I'm a better yes-ander than initiator. Like I've always just, and I've been comfortable with that. And I'm like, you know what? There's a place for that. There's like writers who like everyone wants to write their own original thing, but they're like, oh, we need like more TV writers who can like write to an existing world and characters. I'm like, oh no, I would rather have that and like the prompt and then like go off of that. Like that's my personality.
Yeah.
But I realize that the more artistic things I do all over the place, the more I look at something and I'm like, oh, it needed this instead. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting closer to being like, I want to just do my own thing.
That makes sense.
And like in this full journey,
Yeah. I'm going to say this out loud because I haven't said it out loud yet because I just got this information yesterday. So this is me processing it. But again, listening to this Daniel Kaluuya podcast, he was talking about, so one of the fears of me feeling like I'm more of a problem solver than a creator is that I won't be able to be inventive in my acting, and not inventive for the sake of invention, but inventive for the sake of like being creative and finding truths. And he said yesterday, he was like, yeah, I like come in and I just let the script tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. So now I'm like, great. Now give me something and I'll figure out a lot. Like, so I'm like creating right now the connection of like, okay, cool. I don't need to be afraid of not being a creative or like inventive or like somebody who makes like interesting, really cool, truthful choices, because all I need to do is take whatever is being written and go, great, let's figure this out and like, let's digest it. And oh, okay, cool. Thank you for being on that journey.
I really like that.
I do too.
I really, really like that.
That sparked a couple things in that I thought of. I don't remember where we got this from, but I don't remember if it was like from a book, but it was like about like the story revealing itself to you and not trying to write it. What was that from?
Oh, wow. Is that also The Artist's Way?
No, we were taught. It might have been from a book we read, like one of our books that like the lead characters were writers or something. And I don't remember if that's
driving me crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, but we were bringing it up all of the time. And then another book that that a lot of writers read is like On Writing by Stephen King. Mm-hmm. And it's not like a writing manual, but he kind of just, it's like more of an autobiography. And he's like, I was here and here, and this is like where I got the idea for Carrie. He's like, I was cleaning bathrooms as a summer job. And I was like, how embarrassing if this happened. And then that's like what sparked the story. And I felt like reading that book freed my whole idea where I'm like, I need to sit down. This is how you accomplish the thing. This is what it means. This is a character. This is the climax. All that stuff like went out of my mind. I'm like, oh, original ideas are just everywhere. Like these two connections. And you're like, oh, then there's a spark of a new thing. And I feel like the revealing the story was when we were writing was something that was like really eye-opening for us, because we're sitting there and like instead of like trying to force it, or like I was writing a character and I was like, oh, I like these types of like leading men characters, and then this guy ended up not being that at all, and I'm like, well, the story's just like telling me that this is the way it needs to go.
Do you know who I think it was Judy Bloom said it in her masterclass.
Oh, that might have been it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I feel like I didn't watch that one.
You didn't. I feel like I told you. I feel like she says that. Maybe we got it from somewhere else too.
Maybe it was another masterclass, like another writing one.
I know that she says it because she's like, here's what I know that she says. She says that she lets characters talk to her and speak to her and through her. Like she's like, they tell me what they need to be. She's like, she has like specific details about characters that like are in a sentence. Like, you know, you're very good at this, Rachel. I'm like, you'll say like one sentence about someone. You'll be like, it's like a 30-year-old Russian woman went and got like a nose job, and you're like, oh, that is exactly what she looks like. Like,
interesting.
Yeah. And that is, she's like, I get that from the character. Like the character tells me who they are and what needs to happen.
There's an element of that in like dance choreography where it like also is not something you're forcing, but you feel. And like I feel about something also that was really changing for my work was I was on an improv team with a couple of teachers and coaches that were into organic openings, which like the systems person in me is like, I like premise openings. I'm like very logical, like all those things. But my best work was with organic openings where it's just like the sound and the movement just like evolve. And then from that, like you're just like, it looks like a weird, like modern dance art piece from college that's like very extreme. Like that's what it feels like when you're like, if you walked into an improv show that's doing an organic opening, you would be like, what the hell is this? You're like, ooh. And then like the first scene is like a ghost that lives in a house on the end of the block. And like, you don't know that, but like, it lets the voice and movement, go like through the team, and they do that for the opening, and it becomes like some weird moving, like choreographed, like sound and movement piece. And then you like do scenes off of that. And it's not as premise based, but I was like, wow, how like you would never come up with this stuff through monologues or interviews or any of the other like ways that you do openings. And I think that, like in a similar way with like movement, you can also be like, oh, this is being revealed. Writing, it's just a lot of common themes in different art forms.
Well, when I was first choreographing, you saw me, Onye, go through a rough patch with choreographing where it would take me like hours and hours and hours to choreograph like a 2-3 minute piece because I was trying to force things, and I was like, well, what does it look like? And this. And then now I'm like, well, what is the music telling me to do? Like, and now, Rachel, you've seen me choreograph quite a bit, especially for class, where I'll just like, if I get stuck, I like stop, I start the song over, and then I just do what I would naturally do to the song. And like, that's the choreography. Like,
I also think it has to do with like the music is like speaking to you in that moment. Cause like, just like how you can listen to a song so much and then you like don't like it anymore. Like you really liked it. You wanted to listen to it all the time, and you like go through those phases with music. But there's a lot of music we've been listening to where I'm like, I only see pieces coming out of them. And I'm like, oh, I'm surprised like no one's done a piece to this, even though I know it's not really like that kind of song, but it like the lyrics and the music like feel like there should be a piece done to it.
Yeah.
Every time I hear a new like if I'm listening to a movie, but if I'm watching a movie and it has like a really interesting score.
Oh no. What is that? Is it full?
Oh, it says limited space remaining.
Okay. I guess we might have to wrap it up. So.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry, we got an alert
please
from
finish what you're saying.
From our soundboard.
Every time I listen to, I keep saying that. Every time I watch a movie that has a cool score, I'm like, there's going to be 11 marching band shows to this. Like 100. Like Incredibles came out, I'm like, it's a done deal. There are like 17 Incredibles shows at the same competition, or like anytime Ed Sheeran or
comes out with an album, a new single drops.
This is gonna be every Wonder Guard show in the entire world.
It's the same in the dance world too, like competition dance.
Crazy
it's like,
that
James
artists
Blake, here we go,
can reach so many people. Like how like something that's like commercially popular versus like niche popular. I'm like how so many people can be like, I hear it and I like feel it and I like it, and then all of a sudden that's the popular thing.
Now when I see like a new America's Dance Crew or any of those shows, I'm like, this is going to end up in somebody's indoor drumline show. Like for sure, because it's happened, and those are the people who win.
I have a lot of opinions about this, but here's my last question that I have, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Do you have any words of advice, especially if people are hitting hurdles in their dance journey, or just in general? Do you have any advice for people who are finding themselves as dancers?
Finding themselves as dancers?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Do what you can to not judge yourself, because everything that feels foreign is going to be like up for some version of critique. Like your way of figuring out how to like come to terms with whatever's happening, especially if it's new, is, well, am I doing it in the way that I've learned it? But so much of like art, I think, is, are you doing it in the way that you want to do it? Like, are you doing it in the way that feels the most natural for you? Right? There's like an acting exercise that I do that's like, it's 4 words, and I'll have my students do 2 versions of these same 4 words, and I never get 2 versions that are exactly the same, even from the students, and it's like, yeah, your version of this is going to be different. Right. So the only way that you can get to whatever that truth is, whatever feels the best, is to just allow yourself to be where it is without judgment, and then go, was that fun? Did I have fun? And if you didn't have fun, then maybe go, okay, well, why didn't I have fun? Was it because I was self-conscious? Was it because I didn't do it like this person? You know what I mean? So as much as you can, just like, don't judge what you're doing, and put all the energy of that judgment into the energy of enjoyment. The energy of like, okay, I'm going to hit this thing really hard this time and just see what happens. Right? Okay, great. That's really cool, because now that made my leg do this. Oh, wow. Okay, great. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's a muscle. It's something that you have to like really work at, but as much as you can, try not to judge, and like try to enjoy the process of whatever it is. I feel like I'm talking to myself.
You're like, advice for me.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be that. I'm like, what did I just say?
No, I what I'm hearing is come from a place of joy and curiosity.
Yeah. That's the biggest
and compassion
thing.
with yourself.
Absolutely.
Which allows you to make it your own.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And be authentic and find your voice.
It's hard to be judgmental and curious at the same time.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That'll go in our pillow series.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take us out with our outro music.
Yes,
thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for
spending so much time with us. It's probably time for a nap for you, but it's really been a pleasure on us. Yeah, you've been wonderful. You stayed awake the whole time.
I did. Wow. I mostly have to pee, but
yeah, same. I know. I'm like, also time for snacks. But thank you so much, and we'll probably have you on again sometime.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Is that the right one? Come on, outro.
All right. This is going really well.
Thank you. Oh, it's the wrong button.
Well, thanks for hanging in there, everyone. Or if there was a quick cut, it's because we couldn't figure out the music. Here's our outro. Let's go.